Sorry.
And then you.
Not so easy, is it?
See, it's just down there.
Recording?
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll call to order this Tuesday, May 12th meeting of the Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission. First, we'll vote on our meeting minutes from May 5th, 2026. And then please vote on the item.
Great. That down.
I'll break it if I touch it.
Just gonna turn it on. I don't know, it's cranky.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion on the item, please? Thank you, Commissioner Randolph. Meeting minutes from May 5th. Mr. Posey seconds, Commissioner Randolph, anything? Commissioner Posey?
No.
Ron?
I have a correction.
What's the correction?
It is in the public hearing section under where it says conservation and parking management districts. I think it should say mitigation districts, but aside from that, it kind of repeats the prior issue that we had with the agenda where it only mentions 2 of the 4 mitigation districts that were proposed. So it should either reflect all of them or none of them. So that should be corrected. It says areas under consideration include portions of Southport and portions of Fairfield extending northerly to Fairfield University, et cetera. It should really, if it's going to identify them, it should identify the ones proposed by staff and the ones proposed by Commissioner Monahan and myself, or not identify them at all. And then the other thing is I had made a motion, I believe it was during the discussion of the parking and we were discussing the housing law and all that. I made a motion to have the town attorney come here, and that was seconded by Commissioner Monahan, but that's not showing up in the minutes. So that should be added to the minutes.
Okay, I think Commissioner Braun, I think for the parking discussion, my read was that the 2 districts that you and Commissioner Monahan had proposed are within the Southport and Fairfield Center areas. But I mean, we want to just.
Well, I guess we could say there's 4 separate districts that have been proposed. And it should just clarify that there are 4 separate parking mitigation districts proposed. 2 were proposed by staff and 2 are proposed by us. And it should be clear, and I think we did clarify it in the agenda. I don't have a copy in front of me of the agenda, but.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Monahan.
It should also be noted that we did ask for the town attorney to meet with us on this topic. We were told he is not a land use attorney. I subsequently found out after a resume search, he is indeed a land use attorney. So reinforcing the fact that we would like to have an open discussion with him, with members of the town, listening in on this particular topic. So, and it should be reflected in the minutes.
Okay, so Commissioner Randolph, any objection to amending the language in the minutes to note that to add 4 areas, just the number 4 before 4 areas, and adding that motion was made.
I'm reluctant to do this because. Not doing anything.
I think it's Kathy has feedback.
I'm reluctant to do this.
I only have one device on and that's my computer, so.
You may have to mute when you're not
Oh,
speaking.
okay, I'll mute it.
I'm reluctant to do this because the 2 areas that were submitted by Commissioner Braun and Commissioner Monahan were not consistent with any zoning map that I've ever seen. But I will make that concession to say that 4 areas were suggested, even though those 2 areas did not conform to any reasonable standard. And then in terms of the other changes, I think they're de minimis, but if they insist upon making those changes, I've got no objection.
Thank you. Commissioner Capozzi, you good with that?
Yes, no, nothing further from me.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the May 5th meeting with the amendments as articulated. Any other comments? All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next, we return to our discussion of the request to accept offsite below market rate units. A request by Summit Development to accept a deed restricted 3-family structure in lieu of 2 on-site units for the condominium development at 250 Pequot Avenue per section 31.7.J.1. Good evening, Attorney Russo.
Chair, members of the commission, Chris Russo with Russo Rizzi LLC, offices at 10th Fairfield. Here on behalf of the applicant. And I don't know if I can share, can I share? All right. Let's you have it, the presentation. Let's see. Oh, it's letting me know. Okay, good.
Oh, you started sharing. You did, okay.
Okay, I got it. Okay, great. So we were here before you last week. We took your comments. I think, generally, people felt that these units, if they were to be accepted at 21 Ardmore, would need to be renovated. Just a quick refresher, the site that we're talking about, 21 Ardmore, has 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. It's approximately 2,870 square feet. The property is on a 0.23 acre lot. It's currently zone B. Each unit has its own kitchen, bathroom, separate entrance. The first and second floors, which were the 2 bedrooms, each contain 1,100 square feet. The third floor, which is 1 bedroom, contains approximately 670 square feet. So we did an inspection of the property. We again, this market moves fast, so we worked pretty quickly here to do an inspection of the property, look at the inside, the exterior, and we have submitted proposed renovations, which are listed out on this slide. Just to go through them quickly. I know Commissioner Monahan, you had talked about heating and cooling on the dwelling. So what we're proposing to do is install split system AC units, which is the type of system that we think we could do there on the property. On the exterior, we would replace exterior doors, install landscaping, particularly along the street frontage, and paint all the wooden window frames and replace the porch floors, and also just generally clean the outside siding. Each unit would get new luxury vinyl tile flooring, and new carpet in the common areas. We would install new cabinets and countertops in all the kitchens. Do just a general refresh of the bathrooms, new vanities, fix tile tubs. We weren't able to inspect all the bathrooms, but we would rehab them all. We would paint the full interior of all the units, install new LED lighting throughout the building. And in the basement, it does look like there's an area, we talked about storage. There is an area to create storage, as well as have a laundry. So we think there are significant improvements that we can make to these units, to upgrade them, and satisfy some of the concerns that the commission had regarding condition. I know there was a lot of discussion about the equivalency of the units from 250 Pequot, and I think the point my client was trying to make is that when you're building brand new townhome units, it's difficult to find something that's equivalent to that because it's brand new. It's funny, I just did tax appeals in the town, filed a whole bunch, my office filed a whole bunch, and I did a number in the beach area. And it's funny, there's houses that were built in the beach area in 2016, 2017, 2018, and they're almost now one of the older generations of houses because there's houses that have been built there in 2022, 2023, and 2024 that are kind of the new crop. So I think you quickly become outdated in this town. But the point being that, it is tough to say they're equivalent. But what I think we've shown is that we can make some renovations to this property to upgrade these units and have a significant improvement to them so that they are nice units for these unit owners. Or unit renters, I should say. Commissioner Levy, I know you said that this is a more affordable area. I have some further information about rents in this area that I pulled off of Zillow. I submitted some of those comps. What I will say, what I mainly looked at was, square footage, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and also just trying to get around this area to just look at what do you see rents wise around here. So I submitted those properties in the Zillow page, not the full, because I was having trouble printing the full Zillow description. But the first was 2 bedrooms, 45 Ardmore, same street, has a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. It's 1,144 square feet. It's being offered at $2,450 a month. 58 Ardmore, which again, same number of bedrooms, bathrooms, 1,150 square feet, so close to what we have, being offered at $2,300 a month. 2029 Kings Highway was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath at only 650 square feet. It's a newer unit. That's being offered at $2,900 a month. And 105 Churchill Street, which is a couple blocks over, has a number of 2-bedroom, 1 baths, ranging from 688 to 759 square feet. So much less than the square footage in 21 Ardmore. And those are being offered for $3,000 to $3,400 a month. 1 bedrooms, there was 63 Churchill Street, again, a couple blocks over. It's a 1-bedroom, 1 bath. It's 700 square feet. So again, close to our square footage, 21 Ardmore. That's being offered at $1,975 a month. And then 528 Black Rock Turnpike, which is, down the way on Kings Highway, has a 1-bedroom, 1 bath at 770 square feet, being offered at $2,200 a month. The proposal here would be a huge difference in rent from those rents in that area, and certainly be more affordable. The 2-bedroom and I submitted the Chaffa document that talks about fiscal year 2025, would be rented at, so the 2-bedroom would be $1,151 a month, and the 1-bedroom would be rented at $959 a month. So, so still a considerable change and considerably more affordable than what's available in that in that area. And I've spent many hours on this application. And Commissioner Levy, I know you in particular have strong views about units in lieu. I've been appearing before you for a number of years. And so I don't want to diminish your concern with it. I fully understand where you in particular are coming from with your reservations on it. I see it from a different perspective. One, I do think there are challenges with units within a for sale development like the one at 250 Pequot and the challenges it poses to affordable unit owners. But we've talked about that a lot, that I don't think we need to get back into that. But no one here created the affordable housing law. Some people support it, some don't. It has its goal to create affordable housing, and it came up with this system to incentivize towns to create affordable housing or have developers create affordable housing. And part of that law is the HUE system, and they assign points based on rental versus for sale and percentage AMI. And if all things were equal between the units, then the HUE points HUE points would be the same. But they're not. For sale units restricted to those earning 80% of AMI are worth the lowest amount of points besides market rate units within a set aside development and elderly restricted units at 80% AMI. And what we're proposing here is worth 2.5 times that per unit. So clearly those who created this bill saw more value from those types of units from an affordable housing perspective and providing the type of housing that was most needed. And so, you know, it was done with the intent to help those who needed affordable housing. I think this commission, more than just about anybody, understands how much development needs to happen to achieve that amount of points. And so I think this proposal is a benefit to the town and a benefit to the affordable unit owners. And I think these proposed renovations are substantial to upgrade the quality of these units. With that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions. I don't know, Felix, if you had anything on top of that, but happy to answer.
Felix Charney, Summit Development. You asked us to come up with a renovation budget. Fortunately, we're staffed to do that sort of thing, so this isn't really pie in the sky. It's pretty standard. And we were able to turn this around fairly quickly. And somebody in my office who has better IT skills than I did, kind of did some before and after stuff there. It's obviously interpretive. It's not exact, but it's definitely kind of spins a different look for the homes, if you will. So happy to answer any of your questions. The other thing, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later, because I don't have a recipient for this building, we've talked about managing it ourselves. That means I'm subject to the taxes. So I'm not a charitable organization. So the taxes on this existing. Sorry?
It's just feedback.
It's just feedback. So, the taxes here are fairly significant. So we were just, when we realized we were managing it ourselves and we don't have anyone to give it to, we just did some quick calculations, and we think that by owning it and just paying the taxes and operating, we'll lose about $5,000 a year. So candidly, we're going to look for someone who will ultimately take it. So it becomes a 501c and it can avoid the taxes in terms of that regard. I think we put a cash flow statement in your packages.
It's a different presentation in the folder, Chris, if you have it.
Oh, it's different than the one I have. Okay. Yeah. I'll have to get out of it to be able to show that, but.
And do you have this? So one of the things that might jump out and you'd question is the rental loss. So it's pretty standard in multifamily rental real estate to establish some sort of a rental loss. And this was a kind of a tricky one to figure out, but we're renting to 40% of the AMI. So I think we're renting to folks who are the most vulnerable sources of income. So we've essentially taken a rental loss calculation here, which is what's generated the loss. It kind of would run to a break even if everybody paid their rent. We're not sure that that's something necessarily one could count on all the way through. So that just so you guys could kind of work your way through some of these machinations.
Just a couple of questions. I didn't see a notation about new appliances for the kitchen.
Yeah, I saw that too. I thought we were changing out the appliances, and I didn't see it get into this package. I'm not being aloof. I didn't do this. My folks in my office did, but we don't have a problem changing the appliances. So we're just basically redoing the inside of these spaces, countertops, cabinets, appliances, but and redoing all the bathrooms. So so we can certainly commit to do the appliances.
And what about updating like windows and doors to sort of soundproof more thermally?
We painted and did cosmetics. We did not replace the windows.
We did replace the doors. The doors are on.
Probably should have brought the gentleman who does all this stuff for me with me. But Chris, you
We
spoke to
put
Dave.
replace it, replace exterior doors is on that presentation.
Yeah, the windows of the original are staying, but the doors, I guess, are being replaced.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like that large a property to replace just to update the
Well,
windows.
This was about $450,000. To do all of these
Have
things.
it, yeah,
But
and to rehab the building.
Yeah.
Okay, and any reason you wouldn't want to maintain the rental loss against other profits?
I haven't really thought it through. I just kind of, when you think about these assets as an individual asset, I mean, this is obviously somewhat of an anomaly for all of us. You're trying to figure out what to do with it. I've got to go build it and put it together. The operating losses here would generally flow through to me on a K1, so it would not be useless. There's a program in Connecticut called Build for CT that we've borrowed money from. And I was gonna call Vince and see if there was, something here in terms of that regard, but it just, I think on an annual basis, if just one person doesn't pay their rent, it's kind of a disaster. If everyone pays their rent, it's kind of like a break even. And I don't know if ultimately a Fairfield Housing Authority would take this or something. It's really the taxes. $8,000 worth of taxes is kind of what skews everything.
Commissioner Delgado.
And also I just point out that the intent was for the restriction being for perpetuity, so it's something that you would want to, I think, it's that it was, that it would move money every year.
Right. It's just, last meeting, we were pretty definitive that you were going to sort of manage the building, and now that's not the case. And
No, that is the case. We don't, when we started this process, we thought we would find something that Habitat for Humanity would take. And what they want,
Sure.
we don't have. And so at the moment, we do not have a 501c recipient for this. So we are prepared, we're gonna buy this if so deemed so, and we're gonna renovate it. We're gonna do all those things ourselves, and we're prepared to manage it, right? But, as you start to drill into different things a little bit, you go, there's a few little nuances here that come with owning these sort of things that are not fairly typical.
I mean, of everything you explained, I would advocate for changing out the windows to make them as energy efficient and soundproofed as possible. But otherwise, it seems like you've done a thorough job with your analysis of what needs to be
Well,
done.
if that was a condition of approval, I guess you could put that upon me, and I don't know, if there is an approval, would it come with conditions?
Yeah, I mean, I
Like
think,
typical
I
zoning
think,
thing?
yeah, it would have to, because it would have to require that we make the renovations that we're proposing. Do this right, and then so we would have it as a condition that we would make those changes.
Go ahead, Commissioner Delgado.
If I could, Mr. Chair, just make one clarification. Within the regulations, it's not listed as a shall for someone to transfer that to a town entity or the housing authority. It's a may. So it's really at the commission's discretion for guidance.
Thank you.
Just related to taxes, I know that there was a law passed a couple years ago, I think fully affordable buildings.
Can you just speak up just a little bit?
That within the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years, there was a law passed that taxes on fully affordable buildings, I think would go off the rent rolls. That's maybe something that Attorney Russo could look into. But I don't think you would be subject to standard taxation on a fully affordable building.
I hope you're right. We'll find out if that's the case.
So it would, I mean, it would, I know it would impact probably the taxes when it would be revaled. But I'd have to look in to see if it had any type of exemption. I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, won't surprise you, as far as I'm concerned, this is not an adequate proposal. As far as the taxes, if you look at what the Westway, the last for sale, the 2 affordable units there were taxed and assessed based on the affordable, sale price. One's at
Right.
like 255 and one's 300,000, as opposed to $1,950,000 on the other units within that project. So the
Yeah,
taxes.
and this would be based on how much rent it would generate based on the affordable restriction.
Or
So it'd be
whatever figure.
reduced probably, in 5 years when when the next reval is.
And these, I recognize that these are for sale units, which are a unique problem. Particularly because of the issue about common charges and the fact that at the end of 40 years, the last man holding the property gets the benefit of any appreciation in the value, which is something that hopefully within the next 40 years would be changed, because that does seem somewhat
But it wouldn't
unfair.
affect this property.
Well, it would, because if you maintain,
Well, it wouldn't affect 250 Pequot is what I'm saying.
well, if 250 Pequot, if we don't approve other units and the for sale units are held for 40 years under a for sale basis, 40 years from now, somebody has a big gain.
Right, yeah, for 250 Pequot, I'm just saying if they changed it to something that was in perpetuity, that wouldn't change. The 40 years would still expire on 250 Pequot.
Well, it wouldn't apply if we take a step to accept a off premises below market. But let me explain to you my reasons for feeling that this is inadequate. I don't think it's an equivalency Ardmore Street as opposed to 250 Pequot Avenue. I mean, those neighborhoods are very different, and the size and value of the units is a substantial difference. So it's location and equivalency. And I'd point out that this project is an inclusionary development. This is not 830G. When the special permit was issued on these properties, it was with the understanding that with these units would be below market rent affordable units. And I know you've submitted various proposals since, but the one that's on the table right now leaves it in our absolute discretion. No ifs, ands, or buts. You may disagree with me as to some of my thoughts on the common charges, but as to whether or not we have absolute discretion as to whether or not to approve substitution of these 3 units for this one, that I don't think there's any issue.
And don't disagree with that. You have
And-
absolute discretion.
I'm a little bit surprised at this proposal or the inadequacy, because frankly, as to Mr. Cheney, I know that you have spent a good part of your career, and I've read 06880 and Danny Wood's comments about you. And I recognize that you and Summit have a long history of promoting, affordable housing in the state of Connecticut. But as far as this proposal, I think it falls short of anything that this commission in its absolute discretion would ever consider as adequate to or comparable in size and location. And, first as to the math, and please don't respond on the math. Okay?
Yeah, I think.
But, we've gone over that enough. But the website for 250 Pequot Avenue, I don't think there's any dispute. It lists Unit 3B at 2,500,000. That's 1,652 feet. 2F at 1,919 feet for 2,400,000. 3E, which is a 3-bedroom, 2,000,007. 2D, 1,853 feet, 1,995,000. That's what they're listed for. So based on that, I think it's fair that a market rate on each of these units might well be 2 million. That's what I'm using for purposes of my analysis as to what would be, in terms of the dollar amount, comparable units. In the record, Mr. Mark Barnhart has calculated the maximum sales price of each of the below market rate units at $255,683 each. And that assumes that the common charges are capped at 275. And I'll get into that. If you don't cap it at 275, if you were to charge actually $1,800 a month, you would be in excess of the monthly affordable amount, which would violate the statute and the regulations which would pertain. So I don't think if these are going to stay as for sale units, you're going to have to provide in your bylaws that the common charges on the units are going to have to be capped at some number so that the total amount does not exceed the amount that's available for mortgage, principal, interest, and housing costs, which I think is somewhere around $2,300 a month for at 80% or the 3-bedroom. So assuming, for instance, that those 2 units are worth $4 million. If you were to sell 2 of them for $255,000, well, that would be a difference of $3,488,634, which the developer would retain. And even with the $1,250,000 for Ardmore and adding another $450,000, which again is a step in the right direction, but you're still, it's a far cry in terms of the value. That adds up to $1,700,000. the benefit retained by the developer is 3,488,000, which is significant. Now, one of the reasons that I think you want to substitute the office premises units is the variability in the common charges. And I don't think you have a choice, but you're going to have to cap them. And that's because under the regulations from the Department of Housing, and this is section 8-30G-8, paren 6, it specifically provides that common charges are included in the calculation of maximum housing payment calculations. And again, that's, the regulations 830G-8-6. So in my opinion, if you were to include 1,800 as common charges, then you would basically have to give these units away. And if not capped, I think if you don't cap it, your homeowners association will probably have to pay legal fees every 2 years to repeatedly foreclose on these units. And I'm sure they'd be looking to the developer to recoup those costs. And it would certainly have to be in the documents or the bylaws for these 2 units. I don't see how you could avoid that. And you would have to have full disclosure there. So I think you are going to have to provide, if you sell these as market rate units in the condominium documents, that there would be a cap on the common charges. I think the location is a significant factor. There's no comparison between a 3-family on Ardmore Street, not too far from Mohican Construction, with the opportunity that's provided to a family residing in Southport, Connecticut. And Attorney Russo, you may recall that on July 22nd of last year, you provided us a lot of documents in connection with the affordable housing at 430 450 Hilton Road. And at that point, you included, and I thank you for, the Connecticut Department Housing report on the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice 2015. And I've handed out page 3 of that document, which I would like to read into the record, which says Connecticut housing patterns. As is the case nationwide, decades of public and private policies and practices have resulted in high levels of segregation within many Connecticut communities. Demographic and geographic data indicate that several groups, including people of color, people with lawful sources of income other than employment, people with disabilities, and single-parent households are particularly concentrated in the state's lowest income communities. By creating and preserving affordable housing units throughout the state, placing greater emphasis on expanding the creation of affordable housing in local and state planning documents, promoting zoning ordinance, foreclosure prevention, affordable homeownership, mixed-use, transit-oriented development, and other initiatives, the state can change its current demographic patterns. Paragraph, as mounting social science research confirms the significant role that housing locations play in enabling people to access and make the most of educational, economic, employment, and social opportunities, it is clear that affordable housing policy is critical to ensuring a promising future for every resident of the state of Connecticut and the state itself. So as far as I'm concerned, not only is it important to the families who will reside at 250 Pequot, and they would reap the benefit of living in Southport, I contend that it's equally important and valuable to particularly in this current political climate, to the other 16 unit holders. So what are possible options? I mean, I don't think your proposal is adequate, both in terms of equivalency and location. Southport, I think, is a desirable community. It's also west of North Benson Road, which to my mind is very important. You know, the only for sale units that I'm aware of are the Westway units, and that's another whole issue. But so, and I'll leave it to you to make an analysis as to whether or not, and you can advise Mr. Cheney as to whether or not it would be necessary if these for sale units remain as below market rate as to the necessity for capping the common charges. I personally don't see that you'd have any other option. If you're going to sell them at 255, if you were to give them away, even then you would probably still exceed the monthly allowable amount. So what are the possible options? You could consider perhaps 2 other units, perhaps at Station Street in Southport. That might be a possibility to put 2 units in there. of comparable size and location. Or you might consider donating 80% of the difference, the amount retained by the developer, which would be $2,790,907 to the Affordable Housing Fund, which could then be used to fund houses perhaps on Quincy Street, which could then be deed restricted in perpetuity.
Okay, so to answer those,
Respond to First, the 250 Pequot is not listed. Secondly, I've built affordable housing. I was trying to do it while you were talking. I think I'm over 100 units. I've built it in Chappaqua. I have a project that has going on right now in Rybrook. I've done 3 in Westport, 1 in Greenwich, 1 in Darien. That's it. So in Norwalk as well. All of my affordable housing projects, all are rental. So my thesis, which is the genesis behind the need for this amendment, is it's very difficult to make affordable housing work on a for sale property. That's first. You and I will never agree on math. But I always would love to borrow money from you because I wouldn't have to pay it back. I could borrow whatever I needed to build it. And of course, that doesn't count, but that's of course tongue in cheek. I've offered and be happy to write a check for $1,500,000, which is about what this is going to cost to your affordable housing. If you have a fund, it's so much easier. Then I don't have to build this. I don't have to try to figure out every single little thing that needs to go on, and I don't have to operate it for a long time. So I'm happy to write a check in terms of that regard. And then you all decide what to do with those dollars and where to put them. It's also more beneficial to me tax-wise if I go ahead and give you that money, and we can do that tomorrow if that's something that y'all want to do. And
We need a regulation.
yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I was gonna say, the regulations are.
no bribe and
Did spend a
no
lot
bribe
of
and
time to get a fee.
And then in fact, that's what Habitat for the Humanity, to come back to that, has asked me to do. They've asked me to give them the money so that they can build something. The problem is there's a bit of a double dip there. Because I think most of what they've got going on is already on town donated property. So it doesn't accretive, there's no increase in the units, but if you guys would take payment in lieu, this would be a lot easier for everybody.
I could submit that regulation again. We did go through that.
Just one question to clarify something you've stated before. So you said it's a $5,000 annual loss to run the.
I just did some cash flows this morning because I was trying to, dealing existing taxes with the rental loss. My guys in the office did this for me and said, assuming we have a rent collection loss, that we would lose $5,700 a year. But it's Mr. Randolph, it's a pie in the sky number because we have to project that maybe one of those 3 tenants won't pay their rent. The difference between this particular tenant and a Section 8 is there's no guaranteed rent payment. So this is still folks who have to make their payments, and one could logically, unfortunately, assume that maybe there might be a problem sometime in the future with the rent collection.
Comments? That's correct. Commissioner Monahan.
There was a letter submitted by Greg Bosch. Did everyone read this?
I did.
Who are the families or individuals who are currently renting in the building? And are they aware that this application?
I'm not sure if they're aware of that. Their leases are expiring as well.
We've not had any, well, obviously, we looked at the building and then obviously we looked at it a lot closer to come up with all of this. So I'm not aware of that. Anyone is aware of this going on, but it's obviously not a secret. Their leases, 2 of the leases expire in August and 1 is month to month. Is Mr. Bosch a tenant?
Mr. Bosch just wrote a very lengthy letter to us with a lot of things to consider and things I hadn't considered before, so.
Well, and you know, to renovate, obviously, to this extent, somebody would have to move out to be able to get in there and do what we're looking to do. They could apply back to renting, which would be at a much reduced rent than it is now.
So they've not been informed.
No, I don't believe so.
sorry?
I don't believe so. 'Cause we're still a,
We
affected by it.
identified the property. We scooted in here to say, is this gonna work? you all have been very gracious with your time. 'Cause it's the third time I've shown up here in 3 weeks. And just trying to get to a place in the realm of the possible, at which point we would make the offer and put it under contract. And because I presume if we get this done, there's gonna be some other procedures associated with it.
I mean, we still have to have an accepted offer, so I mean, there's
Yeah,
some.
no, his letter is interesting because he writes the current approach is a unit in lieu proposal,
Right,
allowing the
which-
developer to purchase it, versus. I mean, I think we're gonna get a significant number of HE points, which I think is great. I like your proposal, although the air conditioner should be removed from the second floor in the,
Yeah, the rendering, yes,
Yeah, and
I saw that.
and I also.
Photoshop that one.
I also agree with Commissioner Levy that the locations are not equivalent and that, obviously we would prefer to have a more comparable location, but that doesn't seem, I understand the finances of it. And it is expensive to upgrade these properties.
Yeah, and on that,
This neighborhood was a good neighborhood. My single most
Mm.
successful project in Fairfield was the Whole Foods that I built, which is right in this neighborhood.
I don't think it's a question of whether it's a good neighborhood or not, and I guess I'll just jump in. I mean, I think it's not about good neighborhood, that's a subjective term, but it's I think a lot of people love that neighborhood, but to the point Commissioner Levy was making, and I read Greg Bosch's letter, which is very lengthy and thorough, and essentially walks through the entire history of the commission considering your various proposals, as well as this specific proposal that we're considering right now. And he does a great job of summarizing what I think a number of us on the commission said at the time. I've referred you back to my comments at the time when we were deliberating that, and which echo a lot of what Commissioner Levy said. And one of the things that Greg Bosch's letter points out, he says Fairfield has too little affordable housing, and the affordable housing Fairfield does have is not evenly distributed throughout town. Inclusionary housing is one of the few tools available to ensure that when new housing is built in high opportunity neighborhoods, affordable housing is included there too. So I think, we can, sure, there's value in need restricting homes in neighborhoods like Grassmere, but the hesitance, I think certainly I'll only speak for myself, although I think other Commissioner Levy and probably others felt the same. This is a tool we should use sparingly. I think some of us were reluctant to pass it at all, but only because of the absolute discretion did we agree to it. And so we should use it sparingly. And I understand the finances may not work out right now, given what's available in Southport and other high opportunity neighborhoods. And that's fine. If finances don't work out, then we simply don't have to accept a proposal, and it just leaves the approved plan with the 2 units at 250 Pequot that would be below market. So it's not anything against what you're proposing necessarily, but I think there was a feeling that regardless of the quality of the renovations you may do to it, it's hard to get around the fact that this is not in a high opportunity neighborhood, and it seems to be antithetical to the purpose of having inclusionary housing in these high opportunity neighborhoods like Southport.
yeah, and hold on 1 second. So two things. First, there's a lot of people that are speaking towards like, what are the needs of affordable, people who are seeking affordable housing. And I can't speak for people who need affordable housing. But again, what I can point out is that the bill for the housing bill, which awards HUE points, awards 1 for sale 80% AMI and 2.5 for 40% of AMI for rent. It significantly values it more and is trying to incentivize the creation of that housing because, and if you look at the origin of that bill, because that is where the greatest need was. And so by doing this, we are addressing what the state has identified as the greatest need with affordable housing. And again, this commission knows how much it would take for a development under your regulations to get to 2.5 points. So it's not just, numbers, there's a lot of development that would have to be.
Attorney Russo, can't live inside an HUE point. And so, you know, an HUE point is a nice incentive for the town, but it doesn't mean anything to a person looking for. a
Well,
home.
and so that was actually the second part of my point. So I have not looked for affordable housing myself, but I did help somebody this year in trying to locate affordable housing. And it was extraordinarily difficult. I can tell you, if you give me just a second here, we looked at, yeah, so we called Stratford for, to see if they had affordable housing, available. Nothing was available. Called Trumbull, the wait list was closed. They said no units would be available for another 6 to 12 months. Shelton, there were 60+ people on the waiting list. And they were experiencing only 3 to 4 unit openings a year. Ansonia had nothing. Seymour, the wait list was closed. So there is just a need for units, and this does provide an additional unit. And that's important to the person who, you know, whoever ends up occupying that unit, it's going to be important to them that's available. So I don't, particularly the person I was working with, he wasn't looking for, you know, what's the best deal can I get on affordable housing and where I'm going to be? He was just looking for a unit of housing, and he couldn't find anything in the surrounding area. It was tremendously difficult. And so I think creating something, and this was around the range of what he was looking for. I know there is a big need for people who are at 40% of AMI. That's typically not addressed in local regulations. It's usually 60, 80%. That is, you know, both 830G and local regulations. There's not a lot that provides 40% of AMI. So I think this is addressing a big affordable housing need, this proposal.
So the only thing I was gonna add, sir, was this isn't easy for anybody. You guys are trying to put a round peg in a square hole. You don't like the location. Maybe it's not enough. It's not comparable. Those are an incredible number of matrix to try to manage. And I think you're going to see more of this. And in fact, unless everybody just comes in here with less than 9 unit proposals, you're going to see more and more of this. So you're forcing anybody in the for sale business to develop only 9 because they want to avoid where I am. You ought to come up with a payment in lieu program, and then you ought to yourselves decide where, when, and how. Because there's a fairly significant amount of money available here. You will still have land. And then you all, the land use folks, figure out how many units you want to build and where it needs to go and what it should look like and whether the air conditioner should be centralized or through the wall. And you get, it becomes into your own domain. It becomes into your own control. You can take those dollars up front and then you can slowly accumulate them and you can do something significant. You know, we don't have all the hours in the world, but at one point in time on my big project in Westport, the town advocated that I cut a deal with the Westport Housing Authority. And I took half of my project, which was 180 units, and I was going to do my market stuff. And I took the other half of the project, which was another 90 units. So I was giving it to Carol Martin at Westport Housing Authority. And she was going to build what she needed. And the number of points that were going to come off those 90 units eclipsed anything by a factor of 10. Because she was putting elderly, handicapped, everyone else and anyone else. And she was putting it right next to my project. Now that one, of course, is rental, but this is something that you all could take control over and find the right place for it. And then the agenda here is not only to create affordable housing, because I think most people believe in it, but it's also to control where it goes. So you're not besieged and invaded by constant 830G applications that you think are inappropriate for bad locations or grossly outsized. So to me, that's your solution.
Commissioner Braun? Commissioner Braun?
All right, I have a question. Did you figure out, did you already state how many points that Ardmore property would get if it was for sale instead of rental?
7.5
No, that's if it's for rent.
rent.
How much would it be if it was for sale? How much are you losing by not having? Because I thought it might be better if they could be for sale and help
Well-
people own property.
for rent offers more points than for sale.
Do we know what the difference is? Is it a big difference?
I'm getting there. I will tell you in a little, I'll pull it
And
up.
while you're looking, I just wanted to point out, because I've studied a little bit about the history of 8-30G, and there's nothing in 8-30G that says really where you should put the housing. They want towns to have more affordable housing. That's why they passed the law. And that's
Yeah.
why the points don't have to do with what neighborhood the housing is in. The points are the points based on the type of housing. And it's unfortunate that the law doesn't, cares less about people owning a house than renting a house. But that's what we're stuck with. So,
Yeah,
things are,
that's what I was trying to point out, and
Yeah.
I have the number, so, for folks who are 80% of median income, if it's for sale, it's worth 1 point. If it's for rent, it's 1.5. For folks who are, 60% of a median income, it's 1.5 for sale, it's 2 for, rent. And then for 40% of median income, it's 2 points for sale and it's 2.5 for rent.
so what's the, you do the math?
So 250 Pequot would yield 2 points and 21 Ardmore as proposed would yield 7.5.
Okay, so, yeah, and so here's the problem. We passed this regulation for you. You proposed this, right? And now we're saying we don't want to follow our regulation. I don't understand what my fellow commissioners are saying, because my understanding is we also approved your project knowing that this is the regulation we passed that you proposed for this project, right? Is my history correct on that?
Well, we 250 Pequot was approved. I don't know if my fee in lieu regulation was in the hopper at that time. I think it might have been
Right,
before, and
elections
then
was
and
at
then
the
I
same
went
time. Yeah.
and that was denied, and then I came back with the unit in lieu.
Commissioner Levy.
The offsite, we came out with the offsite regulation, right?
I think the proposal then was 250,000 per unit in lieu. To what you originally proposed, which.
Yeah, I think it was 250,000.
It wasn't enough money. It was at the implication.
Yes.
But I recall them happening at the same time, and that this came up because of this exact problem, that we can't have multifamily ownership more than 9 units if we have affordability. We just passed another regulation a year ago, which I think Attorney Russo proposed. I thought you proposed it. Somebody did, allowing 10 to 12 units per acre in every zone in town if minimal acreage is found. How are we going to ever? And a lot of those could be condos, right? That was considered kind of the condo law from the 80s that was scaled back, and then we relaxed the regulation a year ago to allow more of that. How are we ever going to get ownership multifamily if we don't have this regulation be functional and able to be used? How can that be done? It sounds like you can't build this Pequot Road one with ownership if you have to make the other unit owner subsidize the 2 affordable units. And also 830G never said we want people who don't earn a lot to live in Southport $2 million condos. It just says we want Fairfield to have more affordable units. That's why we're saying Fairfield can't follow zoning laws with 830G apps. And that's why the burden of proof shifts. Those are the 2 big things that 830G offers developers so they can build, affordable units in Fairfield and other towns. So it doesn't say put them in Southport. It says put them in Fairfield. Then you take advantage of everything Fairfield has to offer. So it seems to me, from a developer's perspective, how are you going to build more than a 9-unit ownership multifamily if we have to deal with this, and if we're not going to use this regulation we passed?
Commissioner Levy.
Well, I think the answer, Mr. Cheney could probably provide it.
Carney.
Carney, I'm sorry.
Cheney's the guy who never has to borrow money.
Or it's Cheney in our minutes, I think, but be that as it may. I think, I'll leave it to the developers, but it's a question of how much. And I think, obviously, when you got involved in this project, with 16 units with 2 being affordable, you figured that was better than coming back to us and asking for 9.
Candidly, I was aware of Chris's regulation, and as a developer tends to always be an optimist. Otherwise, you wouldn't have anybody in front of zoning ever. We looked at that regulation as there was an interest in exploring a way to address affordable housing and for sale housing. Obviously, I don't want to get into a big real estate lesson, but we build for sale where the land is too expensive to build for rent. And we also build for sale in areas where you can't get the density that works on a for rental basis. So like Ruger's going to be coming in here pretty soon, and we were looking at buying that, and there's enough land there to, put a fairly substantial amount of multifamily, which brings you over into the public forum to get financing, HUD, things of that nature. So those are all, and that usually requires at least 150 units. So there's a whole bunch of financial things going on here that drive it. But a recently approved 9-unit project, not too far from me, is 9 units, just didn't stop because it was a good number at that craps table. That was just a good number to avoid having to deal with the joy we're sharing together this evening.
Actually, I think we changed it to 5, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, it's 5.
Yeah.
But previously, and just about the fee in lieu, there was talk during that. I remember about adjusting the number because that was derived from looking at other towns and what they had for their fee in lieu. But I know one of the commission's considerations was the fact that you wouldn't get the points unless there was a unit, and that's why the unit in lieu was more preferred.
Just finally, yeah. And I think if you look back at the record, you'll see that this regulation was passed, at least if you look at my comments, because we were given absolute discretion.
And I'm not disputing that at all. You have sole discretion. It's exactly what it says.
Commissioner Braun?
Just want to point out one other thing, which is the points. So these points do not require constructing a building and getting certificate of occupancy. 7.5 points is a decent amount of points. I think we need maybe 100, or we needed 100 points to get to the next moratorium. The last time we got a report back on that. And so it's being worked towards, but you have to have a C of O. For this, we don't need a C of O because the points get done when we record the deed restricted provision in the land records. Am I correct on that?
Yes, and we are proposing renovations, so there would be some renovations, and then we would get.
Would the points be gotten after the renovation is done? Because I mean, the house is there, the building is there.
Sure.
Wouldn't the deed restriction trigger the points at that point instead of waiting?
Might be
for
when
the
I
renovation?
think it's a little bit gray, but I think it's when I buy it, it's the same time that I deed restrict it.
Okay, so we would get 7.5 points by doing this. And I just want to point out that the Affordable Housing Trust, I mean, our town cared so much about points, we decided to give $570,000 to a private developer to build something up on, the Judd Estate on High Street that we fought in court against for 4 years on 2 wetlands cases. So we care about points. This town cares about points more than anything else. So I think we should think about the points.
I think there's a bit of amnesia about the discussion, and again, this letter from the member of the public who submitted it spent 12 pages going through the history of this, and I know you've already acknowledged this, but it seems some Commissioner Braun, I'll just direct you to the paragraph, which again recounts our deliberations on this. The commission's own discussions anticipated the problems being raised by this proposal. Commissioners expressed concern that offsite compliance could become a backdoor mechanism for developers to avoid providing affordable housing in Fairfield's more expensive neighborhoods. Commission did not adopt rigid distance requirement, but not because the location was irrelevant. The commission recognized that location, distance, neighborhood, and concentration remain central to the analysis, and it goes on and on. So we can't say, why wouldn't we use this regulation that we proposed? We had lengthy discussions over many meetings where we explained exactly why we wouldn't be using the regulation in this precise instance. So the record is very clear on that. And I know you know that, Attorney Russo.
Yeah, it was intended, I think, in my mind, I saw it as almost a balancing test. And so, we were supposed to, and that's why we talked about a rubric, maybe that a rubric could be developed. So you can look at the different factors. And so, this came up quickly. We don't have the rubric yet, but I think we've talked about what are the pluses and minuses.
So, I think we could make a motion if we want to just sort of take a formal sense of the commission.
Right, and I would say, and just to reiterate, if you were to approve it, I think you would just make, in my suggestion, but that it would be conditional approval with the improvements, with the state improvements, and I think we would, put it on the building permit, and then we wouldn't get a zoning sign off on, or zoning certificate on it unless we had made those improvements to the property. That's how I kind of would see it.
So this is down for bills and communications. Does that mean we still are, what is the procedure for this? I don't see it in the regulation.
I think, just to be clear, we should take a vote on it, which doesn't, it applies specifically to this proposal. I don't think that forecloses you coming back with some other proposal.
What would the vote signify?
Sorry?
Is the
This-
vote sort of a sense of the body vote, or is it an approval vote of our regulation?
No, it's not an approval of the regulation. I think it would be of this specific proposal. There's a proposal before us, a request before us, I should say. If we want to use the term precise with their language. Really be go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I've made my opinions clear, and I appreciate your efforts, but in my mind, this proposal has been adequate, and I would recommend that it be denied.
Commissioner Levy moves to deny the request to accept offsite below market rate units. Commissioner Randolph.
Second.
Randolph seconds. Anything?
Nothing further.
So, stay quiet because I was waiting to explain the reasoning for my vote. I think this is creative, and I think as a community, we're having an excellent conversation about the need for affordable housing. I think that the idea of having offsite housing is excellent. It's what the intent was. And I was on the commission when we passed this ordinance and we discussed limiting it to 1,000 feet. If you remember, that was my suggestion. We went back on that because we thought that might have been too restrictive, but this does not meet, what you're proposing does not meet the intent of creating like-kind housing for the location at 250 Pequot, which is a beautiful location. And the two housing units there would provide some really high-quality housing or that, as Mr. Bosch articulately said in his letter, is not, it's affordable housing, but it's not equivalent. So your proposal does not meet the intent for like kind, and it's not equivalent. And I'm a accountant. I've worked in an accounting firm for many years. I'm a finance person, corporate finance. I've got degrees in this. I know finance, and there's three ways to value real estate. It's by the discount method, it's by the replacement, and it's by the market value. And to keep it simple, because there's been a lot of obfuscation on the value and the like kind, if you just look at the market value, and you can argue whether it's between 3.5 million or 4 million. Substitute property is materially less. It's about $1.5 million. So you can look at discounted cash flow, you can look at construction value, you can look at market value. But if you just look at market value, that's the simplest way to look at things. Now, the other indicator that's a little more sophisticated is the difference. You said you lose $5,700 a year on this location. So if you cap that at 7%, which is quite generous, that's $81,000 difference. They're losing, you said, on a subsidy. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, if you the amount of loss it's basically looked at over time. So if he's losing $5,700 a year, that translates to $80,000. So even if you add that in, you're at $1.5 million plus the renovation. You're still a far cry from
The 80 grand by multiplying it by 40 years.
it's a cap. I capped $5,700 loss over an infinite time period at 7%. That's $81,000. And I don't want to go through a math lesson here. So that it's just there's no way that a $4 million worth of units can be replaced by, charitably call it 2 million after the renovation. So the math does not work. And I think that's the best representation of that when you come back to us, if you decide to come back to us. That's what I will be looking for, is some type of closer financial equivalency. And as Mr. Bosch has said, something that is closer in equivalency, not only in type, but also in location. So Pequod was approved to have 2 affordable units. That's what you guys signed up for. You said you had we gave you the option to come back, and this option doesn't meet the intent of what what we're asking for. The Affordable Housing Committee agrees in their letter with this conclusion. Mr. Bosch's analysis, and I would encourage anyone who's interested in this to read it. It was an excellent letter. And I'm really glad that people in this community are thinking this deeply about it. He makes the distinction between fair housing and affordable housing. You provided affordable housing. He makes the distinction of fair housing, which is housing that's in the same neighborhood, that's more similar, that provides more opportunities. And I have to quote Mr. Corsillo here on one thing he just said: you can't live inside of HUE points. We want HUE points, but we would be selling ourselves short if we were just compromising on HUE points. That's all I had.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Braun?
I just don't think it's a compromise. I think we're getting affordable units more than we would have. And by turning down this attempt to use our regulation, we're basically telling people, don't bother, just go back with 9, or now I guess it's 5. You know, we're not going to get the multifamily ownership. The only ones we have, according to what Jim told us a couple of years ago, are 2 on Westway. And those were as a result of a lawsuit settlement. And my understanding is there's a challenge to even the occupancy of them now. Allegedly, they're occupied by insiders, not even by people who need affordable housing. So I think it's just really hard. We should be encouraging ownership of multifamily as well as ownership of affordable. And it's unfortunate they don't get enough points. I would have preferred to see these as ownership on the affordable, but I understand the points as well. I don't think we're living by the points. I think the town just spent over $500,000 to get points on something we didn't want. But you know, we need the points, and this gets us points for a reason. The points get us affordable units. We're not going to get the affordable units if we don't follow through with this. So you're turning down a developer that's coming here who wants to give us 7.5 points quickly. And that means we got units. We got 5 units, or was it 5? Yeah, 5 units. So we wouldn't have had them otherwise. So I think it's a mistake to turn this down.
Commissioner Capozzi?
I happen to agree with Commissioner Braun on this. I do see Mr. Charney coming here in good faith. I know he thanked us for our time, but I thank you for your time. I also recognize that this ain't your first time at the rodeo, and that you've worked very hard over decades to build affordable housing. And I do believe you're here in good faith. I don't believe you're trying to pull a fast one. I also think this is a very complicated issue with, you know, and I do agree with Attorney Russo and members of this commission that a rubric would be a good idea, but I think there are certain realities. And when I was campaigning and knocking on doors, one of the things people said was, you know, please help us keep the moratorium. Please work with developers in innovative and creative ways. And I don't, you know, I'm gonna mess up the expression, but, you know, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I do think that there is no perfect in this, you know, when we're trying to impose statewide law on individual towns that are very diverse and different and have different needs, different populations, different goals, you know, as towns themselves within, you know, it's very difficult to kind of fit all of these pieces together. And I would advocate for giving something new and different a try with a man like Mr. Charney, who has a demonstrated history of trying to work with towns in this state and a demonstrated history of building quality, affordable housing as a business goal of his. That's my 2 cents. And I would vote in favor of this.
Against the motion. Against the motion, fine.
Correct. I would vote against the motion in favor of the proposal.
I'll restate that before we move on.
Yes, thank you.
Other comments, Commissioner Monahan?
I also would vote against the motion in favor of proposal, because I do believe that elevating the buildings, you're going to be giving several families or individuals a wonderful place to live that they can call their own long-term. They don't have to move after a year or 2 years. I would respectively request, if it's something we could ask, that the current tenants, if they qualify, if they did want to stay on, that they were invited to, you know, get in line for the units. I'm not sure kind of how that works. And I do agree on the location, but I think going forward, we could be looking at location kind of more stringently now that this has come in front of us, you know, to say, okay, we'll allow this, but going forward, I liked your idea of location, the distance, you know, 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 50,000 feet, whatever it is, you know, just 2 small Cape Cod homes on Hulse Highway for $1 million each might have been satisfactory to get you to the number if it were available. So, you know, if that's a comparable area, it's very close by, it's kind of in the same school district. So there are options. There's just not many options right now. So if you're looking to satisfy this need right now, I think this is a great opportunity. I think going forward down the road, we should have some sort of distance requirement to help, you know, with this. But I do think building that you're building, to have 2 affordable units in there and to have people, you know, with this income in that building, I do think it will be very, very, very hard on them to keep it up in terms of everything associated with homeownership.
It's okay, yeah. Build that on it, yeah.
I feel like I appreciate the effort and what you guys are trying to do and come up with a way to meet pretty vague standard. There kind of is a lack of standard. I think for me, what this presents is kind of trying to stress test. the
We can't hear you.
regulations. I feel like what this process has done is give us an opportunity to try to stress test the regulations. And I think for me, I see a couple different ways that we might be able to modify the regulations to give some maybe more clarity to someone in this situation and trying to provide something in lieu and maybe go back to the drawing board and consider the way that this can function more clearly and with direction going forward. So I guess for me, what I'm saying is that I don't think I support this proposal right now. But I think this has been enlightening for me to think about the way that we can create something that's more standardized and understood by future applicants.
Commissioner Libby.
Just for the record, I'd like to point out, my recollection is that we approved High Street and that the appeal in court had to do with the Conservation Commission. And also that the regulation in question is not a state statute, but our own zoning regulation, which is at issue and something we may have to look at again. But for the moment, that's our regulation.
Well, we're talking about points.
Commissioner Braun, go
I
ahead.
was pointing out that our town needs points to the extent that we took over $500,000 out of our trust fund to give it to a developer that we fought against in court for 4 years. That was my point. We need the points. And because this gets us the affordable units and the points. And I think, you know, this developer is going to lose his ability to do anything for us. Those points would have walked in the door very soon instead of waiting several years for something new to be approved and then built. So I think there's some urgency in allowing this to happen. It doesn't hurt us. It doesn't set a precedent. Each one we have sole discretion on. So we can do whatever we want next time. This gets us points right away. It gets us 5 affordable units, nicely done in a comparable size, a little smaller, but 5 units. So
3 units, Commissioner Brown.
I'm sorry, 5 bedrooms, I guess. Yeah.
Commissioner Randolph.
Oh, I'm sorry, it gets us 1 additional unit and so back to my comment about not equivalency and a rubric to give you guidance. I think this is creative, but it's just not enough. We're not desperate for points. We've been earning points. And I think if you are more creative with this, you can come back with something that's more equivalent. This is a good start, but it's not enough.
Commissioner Monahan.
So if this is almost enough, what else would you need order to have this pass? One more small little house or?
Randolph.
So I introduced the word rubric.
Yeah, I struggled with that when you gave it to me a couple weeks.
Framework.
Because you're a finance major.
Criteria, framework,
You know, I understand the definition of.
So what would be helpful for me, I think it's creative. I was in the conversation about when we approved the in lieu of, I proposed 1,000-foot distance, but then we backed off on that because that was too restrictive. But something perhaps in the school district or an adjacent school district is a criteria. The square footage is way off on this. I mean, the building you're proposing is 3 units and it's smaller than the 2 units that we're trying to substitute. And we're really only gaining 1 extra housing unit and likely displacing families who are in affordable housing now. So size, value, suggest 80% of the value would be a good criteria, and location and quality. And I know that's tough, but that's, come back to us with something that's closer. This is just, and it's Grassmere is a fine neighborhood, but the intent was to have, as Mr. Bosch specifically says, fair housing, which is an equivalent experience for people living in Pequot and Southport, not just affordable housing. And this meets the criteria of affordable housing, but it doesn't meet the criteria of fair housing.
I don't recall that being the intent
Commissioner
that when
Brock.
we passed the regulation.
Any last comments?
I'd like her to expand on that.
I don't, when we had the discussion, when we passed the regulation last year, I think, I don't recall that being the intent about fair housing versus affordable housing. I don't recall that even coming up, actually. It was supposed to solve a problem we had of no one ever building multifamily ownership because of the affordable requirement. That was the sole reason we did this, to give us some way of doing it. I don't recall saying it had to be in the same neighborhood. You had to have affordable in a $2 million condo in Southport. I don't recall that ever coming up with that level of specificity, or even the fair housing law coming up.
All right, all those in favor of the motion to deny the request, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, motion to deny passes 4-3.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
We have 2 applications to recommend to public hearing. I'll call them together. 755 Melville Avenue, special permit application by Fairfield Public Schools to add more than 250 cubic yards of fill in conjunction with converting existing sports fields to turf athletic fields for Ward High School on a residence R3 zone. And 10 Sasko Hill Road, application of Sasko 10 LLC for a special permit and coastal site plan review for construction of a new portico, concrete entrance ramps with low retaining walls, reconfiguration of sidewalks and driveway entrances, and new landscaping in a designed commercial district. Can I have a motion on these items, please? Commissioner Levy.
The public hearing?
Levy moves to recommend the public hearing. Commissioner Randolph. Randolph seconds. Anything further? Any other comments or questions?
I have a question about the fill. Is the reason this is coming to us because of fill or because of turf? Do we approve of turf fields? I don't remember them coming really before us.
It is because of the fill.
Because of the excavation aspect of it?
Yes, they're adding fill to the site. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And all those in favor of the motion to recommend these 2 items to public hearing, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have our coastal site plan applications, starting with 57 Welch Terrace, application of GPRE LLC for a coastal site plan review for demolition of an existing single-family house and detached garage and construction of a FEMA-compliant single-family house on a residence P zone. Morgan?
So I'm doing these for John, who is not able to be with us tonight. Emmeline Harrigan, Planning Director for the record. John has reviewed all of this particular application and found that it's consistent with the Coastal Management Act and will not adversely impact coastal resources. However, he does recommend two conditions of approval. The first is soil erosion and sedimentation controls shall be installed and maintained during the entirety of the construction project at the subject site. And then secondly, the applicant revises the architectural plan sheet S3 to change the name of the ground floor from basement to foundation. That was recommended by the DEP in their correspondence to the town.
Thank you, Ms. Harrigan. Can I have a motion on the item? Mr. Randolph?
So I move to approve. They've already complies with coastal.
No. You come back to that and just state that as your finding.
Okay. I move to approve.
All right, Commissioner Randolph moves to approve. Do I have a second? Commissioner Levy, seconds. All right, Commissioner Randolph.
I move to approve since it applies, it's with the conditions provided by staff, as it complies with the coastal law.
Any other comments? Commissioner Braun?
So this, am I correct that this is actually reducing the impervious surface?
I think it was a decrease.
200.
Just, how does that get reduced when you're building a bigger house, unless it's just getting higher?
So generally, if there's, when they have to elevate a house, they are able to capture the parking below the structure. So if there was, I believe there was a garage as part of this that they are removing in order to make the house footprint a tiny bit bigger. But it's not as big as, it's not as big as the combination of what's there today with, let's see.
They eliminated the garage.
Yeah, it's really the elimination of the garage.
Okay, that's why then, because DEP felt that it was okay as well, except for that designation, not calling it a basement, because we can't have basements down there. So that's fine. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the coastal site plan application with the conditions as articulated by Ms. Harrigan, please raise your hand. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next is 333 Roland Avenue application of Charles W. Rocco and Ellis Meager for a coastal site plan review for demolition of an existing two-car garage and construction of a FEMA compliant two-car garage with a bonus room space above in a residence A zone. Commissioner Levy has recused himself.
Assistant Planning Director Mullen has found that the proposal is consistent with the Coastal Management Act. And the proposal won't have adverse impacts on coastal resources. However, he does recommend three conditions of approval. The first, soil erosion and sedimentation controls shall be installed and maintained during the entirety of the construction project at the subject site. Second, the applicant revises the architectural plans to include flood vents for the ground floor interior storage spaces in accordance with section 20.2.3D of the Town of Fairfield zoning regulations. And three, all utilities must be elevated above the base flood elevation of 12 feet.
Thank you, Ms. Harrigan. Can I have a motion on the item? Commissioner Randolph.
Move to approve.
Commissioner Randolph with the staff conditions.
With the, I'm sorry, with the staff condition. I was looking at the drawings here.
Commissioner Randolph moves to approve the staff conditions. Commissioner Braun.
I second it. I have a question.
I'll come back to you. Commissioner Braun, second.
Thanks.
Commissioner Randolph.
I move to approve since it complies with the Coastal Management Act, and it's a very nice piece of architecture here. It's thoughtfully done, which is always important. Is there an ADU on the second floor?
No, it's indicated that it's just for a bonus room space. So in this particular zone, you can't have a detached ADU. That's something I think that the Affordable Housing Committee had discussed that they would come back to have that conversation with you, whether the commission's ready to consider detached ADUs in our smaller lot zones.
Thank you.
Question I have is from the DEP letter. This is one letter where they're giving a lot of admonitions like they have on other matters in the past, but they didn't on the other ones for tonight. Just this one where they're pointing out one of the goals of the Coastal Management Act is not just to protect property, but to manage the coastal hazard areas to ensure that development proceeds in a manner that hazards to life and property are minimal. And it goes beyond FEMA regulations because it wants to avoid placing people in harm's way from the outset. And then they talk about how we're going to have a 20-inch sea level rise by 2050, blah, blah, blah. So is this different treatment from DEP because it's in a higher hazard area for flooding? And how many more bedrooms will be added than are there now? Just one, basically?
No, I think their comment is specifically related to the sink in the bonus office area above the garage. Just expressing a slight concern that it could be a future, dwelling unit. We don't allow for accessory structures to have sleeping or cooking. So our zoning enforcement officers actually have done enforcement around that issue before. Again, that's a future conversation for the commission if they want to revise that. This statement by the DEP has been common where there's been an expansion in number of bedrooms for the existing structure to a new larger structure, and where we've seen the demolition of a single family home and the construction in a duplex where the lot size allows it. They have been very open with us that they're going to continue giving us that comment because they are concerned with sea level rise impacts and adding more people within high hazard flood zones.
But oddly, they didn't give that comment on the other 4 we have tonight, or the other 3, but so anyway, there's no bedrooms being added, no living area being added. It's just a matter of enforcement, I guess.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
And sorry, Commissioner Levy's recused on this. Commissioner Huntley, are you prepared to vote on this? Okay. Any other comments from the committee? All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the application with the conditions as articulated by staff, please raise your hand. Yeah, motion passes unanimously. Next is 1169 Sasko Hill Road, and Commissioner Levy's back for this one. Application of Sid Schloman for a coastal site plan review for construction of a new single-family house in a residence AAA zone. Targan.
This is, I just want to clarify that for this application, the actual construction area is outside of the FEMA flood zone. But because of the change in statute, this is a direct waterfront site where we cannot exempt this particular construction from review by the commission. So provided that all conditions are followed, the proposal is consistent with the Connecticut Coastal Management Act, and it will not have an adverse impact on coastal resources. Staff recommends the following condition in relationship to the project. Soil erosion and sedimentation control shall be installed and maintained during the entirety of the construction project at the subject site.
Thank you. Can I have a motion on the item? Commissioner Randolph.
Move to approve with conditions provided by staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Randolph moves to approve. Commissioner Braun.
Second.
Commissioner Braun seconds. Commissioner Randolph.
It complies with the Coastal Management Act and therefore I recommend approval.
Thank you. Commissioner Braun.
I have a question. Is this one of the subdivision developments that we approved a couple years ago in Sasko? We approved a subdivision map of, I think, 8 houses, single family homes, and part of it was a dedication of open space that Aspetek Land Trust would be managing. Is this part of that subdivision?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is one of, have any other ones been built yet? I don't remember.
There was a significant remodel to one of the properties. There's one under construction right now that I don't believe went to this commission because it was before the law changed. And there's this one, and then I think there is one more that's under construction.
And is there any need for Aspetek Land Trucks to be involved or notified or anything of the actual applications that come in?
All work is outside of their easement area.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
I was gonna say Attorney Green is here. I think he was responsible for it. So
I recall that.
conservation area by Sasko.
Any other comments?
It's fine.
All right, all those in favor of the motion to approve the application with the condition as articulated by staff, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. The last one, the next one, 85 Old Cliffs Road, I will let Commissioner Randolph call because I'm recused on this and Commissioner Huntley will sit in my place for that. Over to you.
So the request is for 85 Post, application for coastal site plan review for the demolition of existing garage and construction of a FEMA compliant 2-car garage with office space in the second floor. A zone. Right, very good.
Yep, provided, provided that the condition as recommended by staff is followed. The proposal is consistent with the Connecticut Coastal Management Act and will not have adverse impact on coastal resources. The recommended condition is that soil erosion and sedimentation controls shall be installed and maintained during the entirety of the construction project at the subject site. And I just wanted to also clarify for this application, although this is directly adjacent to Ash Creek, the construction is significantly upland of the resource.
Do I have a motion? Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, move to approve with staff conditions. And I think there's also one that they follow FEMA guidelines during construction.
I don't have that one. Where did you see that one?
Mark?
I'm sure we can add it.
Do I have a second?
I have a question.
We need a second first. Do I have a second? Commissioner Capozzi,
Okay, second.
go ahead.
Is the pool that they're building going to be in the flood zone? Or is the pool not in the flood zone?
I do not have that as part of this application.
It's partially within the FEMA designated AE 11 flood zone abutting Ash Creek, according to the DEP letter. But they said the work is above the base flood elevation, but does our new pool regulation apply to this then? Because that was not restricted by location, but we just passed the pool regulation and there's a 2-week period before it can be effectuated?
This pool is not in that construction area. It's not in the velocity zone.
I don't recall exactly what the pool regulation said in terms of which flood zone it had to be in.
It doesn't apply to this property in
Okay,
the area
that's-
where they're proposing it.
Because that would require no offset of resources. That really hasn't been addressed, so.
Any other questions or comments?
I would just point out the DEP doesn't have a problem with it.
Commissioner Levy?
As I said, under section 5A, Mr. Mullen said consistent if the erosion control measures and FEMA guidelines are employed in any permitted construction.
That's where you
That's
got
where I
it from.
found it.
Okay, got it.
Any additional comment?
No.
Can we put this to a vote then? All those in favor, raise your hand. Passes 7-0. All those, anyone opposed? No.
Right. Commissioner Randolph, thank you, Ms. Harrigan.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on to our public hearings. The first one, the application has actually been withdrawn, so we will not be hearing. That was for 90 and 154 John Street. So we will move on to our next one, which is zoning regulation amendment, an application by attorney Christopher Russo on behalf of 1477 Congress Street LLC for a proposed new section 10.19 age restricted housing district within the design residence district to permit an age-restricted multifamily development of no more than 5 dwelling units per acre on sites that are a minimum of 1 acre and located within 1,500 feet of an on-ramp to the Merritt Parkway, provide proposed application requirements and site plan standards. So. Oh, I'm sorry, we did, we left off, you got, I think, about 10 minutes into your comments, so I think, I'm assuming you have more.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff. Once again, my name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport, the law offices of Green and Gross, and I am appearing before you this evening on behalf of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy in opposition to the proposed ARHD regulation. I'm going to move quickly. I know you have a full plate tonight, and I think Attorney Fallon's eager to get going, so I'm going to move it. Reasons for denial, and I'm just going to go through these quickly. One, it is disrespectful to the planning process. It is not a regulation of general application throughout the town. It is targeted really, truly at a single property on Congress Street at 1477 Congress Street. As I had indicated before, I have never heard it to be a planning objective of this commission to create an age-restricted housing development or to create age-restricted housing developments specifically on Congress Street or specifically within 1,500 feet of an exit from the Merritt Parkway, nor have I heard the commission, not aware of any objective of the commission to create age-restricted housing on Congress Street as an objective of this commission, and I mean targeted at that location. The regulation itself is poorly conceived. I am still at a loss as to why it just has to be within 1,500 feet of an entrance to the Merritt Parkway. I don't know why age-restricted housing isn't equally applicable within 1,500 feet of an entrance to I-95, although I've adopted sort of the poor draftsmanship of this application because I don't know what that means within 1,500 feet of an entrance ramp, nor do I think that provides a good metric for measuring where this sort of development should be developed. The metrics in the regulation itself are not respectful of residential neighborhoods, meaning this regulation arguably can fit on, I think we thought 6 lots on Congress Street. I've submitted some maps to the commission where I believe that this regulation could be applicable elsewhere, but the metrics would enable a more dense, more intense, larger building in a residential neighborhood and would not respect the scale of the neighborhood just based on the text of the regulation. It is deceptive in terms of the impacts as worded. It makes reference to it being age restricted. I think that the implication is somehow that it is senior housing, but it is all referenced based off of the definition of family that I've provided to the commission. And in Fairfield, our zoning regulations define family as either persons living together as a single housekeeping unit or related by blood, marriage, or adoption, and 2 roomers, boarders, or lodgers. So in theory, an entire family could live there, a boarder, 2 boarders or lodgers, and actually 3 staff is also allowed. And under the definition, if any one of them were 55 or older, then it would qualify under this regulation. And I'm not sure that was ever I'm not sure that's a fair objective for this commission to create this sort of regulation. And the other definition of family is 5 unrelated individuals living in a home. So if any one of those individuals is 55, then it qualifies under this regulation. I think that there was some thoughtful comments by the commission, for example, that potentially an age-restricted development near the parkway could reduce traffic load because seniors would be retired and they would not commute, and it would somehow, while creating a more intense, while creating housing opportunities, it might not create the same burden on that sort of infrastructure, but based on the definition it uses with up to 5 individuals or a family plus 2, I think it's a fair, I think it's fair to assume that it would create a larger burden on that infrastructure. If it's truly meant to be spun as age-restricted or senior housing, then it does not have those sorts of infrastructure improvements available that we would like to see in Fairfield, including sidewalks, public transportation, access to services, and all those kind of good things that we would think that if we're creating this more dense development for a certain sector of the population, we should have that sort of infrastructure. Congress Street does not offer those sorts of things, and I think is a very poor location in terms of those factors. Interestingly, this nests within the DRD application, and under the DRD regulations in a AAA zone, the property has to be 30 acres to establish a DRD. This nests in to that zone, but only requires 1 acre to create a dense development. And I think that's really counter to all of the thought that this commission put in kind of creating this DRD opportunity. Like once again, it does not respect in terms of scales, residential neighborhoods. The DRD requires 12% affordable component. For some reason, this development only requires 10%, and it's nested within the DRD. And I don't know, it seems to me that if you're trying to serve a population that may be retired or older, you might actually increase the amount of affordable opportunities in that zone. The regulation provides discretion in this commission on deciding whether to have a public hearing, and it does not offer any standards as to when you might exercise that discretion, and that runs afoul. You may consult with our town attorney who has experience in land use matters and can tell you that there are uniformity requirements. Again, we run into the conceptual site plan issue, and that is, we've recently had, this commission has recently had applications before it that are merely text amendments with this conceptual site plan that doesn't quite provide all of the information that this commission should really have in deciding whether to exercise the jurisdiction of allowing these zones. And I would suggest that you might, in considering an age-restricted housing development zone, you might want more. You might want a traffic study before you start dropping a zone into a particular place. You'd want to know whether there are traffic issues. I understand the applicant's argument back is going to be, well, before we spend money on a traffic study, we'd like to get the regulation in place. But I think many of those answers can come through concept review. Septic versus sanitary sewers. I had an opportunity to look at that. Once again, municipal sewer systems provide centralized, professionally monitored wastewater treatment. It's more reliable than thousands of individual septic systems. Septic systems can fail due to poor soils, high groundwater, flooding, age, or inadequate maintenance. We have seen a lot of rain lately, and I am aware from clients of mine actually with septic issues resulting last year from heavy rainstorms. Obviously, the sanitary storm system avoids that. Septic systems are a significant source of nitrogen pollution affecting Long Island Sound. We are all trying to improve the quality of Long Island Sound. Municipal treatment plants remove nitrogen. Septic systems are poor at removing nitrogen. Sanitary sewer systems reduce the risk of contamination of private wells, lakes, rivers, and coastal waters. We're aware that this property has waters and wetlands in the vicinity. Centralized sewer infrastructure supports more efficient land use and would support these kind of densities that is being posed, whereas septic presents issues on that. Septic systems generally require large lots and suitable reserve leaching areas. this offers 5 units per acre and, you know, the site, for example, 1477 is a relatively small site with wetlands and flood zone. And so, I mean, I just don't think it's suitable. Municipal sewer systems are subject to continuous regulatory oversight. Obviously, homeowner oversight of septic systems is less reliable, I would say. And septic systems remain appropriate in low-density rural areas, and I think we discussed this at the last hearing. But for a development of this intensity, I think I don't think that a sewer system would be appropriate in general. And I think as an objective of the commission, I think you'd want that sort of infrastructure. Just quickly, 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statute speaks to consistency with the plan of conservation and development in adopting regulations, in amending regulations, and in creating provisions such as this. This proposes this regulation within 1,500 feet of, again, the Merritt Parkway ramps. Your POCD at pages 22 to 27, you speak in the POCD in terms of you direct higher density and age-targeted housing to particular mixed-use commercial corridors and zones near transit stations, thus restricting, and you try to restrict eligibility for these intense uses outside of these areas that have infrastructure. That's actually in your POCD. And that makes sense because you want, again, those sorts of facilities that can handle a more dense development. The ARHD sort of has this 5 unit per acre provision in it, whereas your POCD at again, pages 22 to 26 and 93 to 94 speak of area and context studies, density limits above baseline, and strategic locations. So you want to look at the locations before you start sort of allowing these on a blanket basis as a matter of policy. So it is inconsistent with that. The ARHD does not require substantive enforceable design standards or compatibility measures. Once again, your POCD that you adopted mandates context-sensitive design, careful physical integration of new housing and density and design controls. Once again, I spoke earlier about the market rate issue, and again, this only requires 10%, whereas you had the POCD had suggested 12% for overlay in higher density districts, and you recommend a study of up to 20%. So I think it falls short on that. The ARHD, again, vests discretion in this commission whether to hold a public hearing, whereas your POCD strongly recommends mandated public hearings, detailed context, and neighborhood impact analysis. This sets coverage, setbacks, bulk, whereas your POCD recommends setbacks and bulk coverage based on neighborhood compatibility, additional setbacks, massing controls above 3rd floor, and additional standards near sensitive environmental elements, and that kind of thing. And this regulation actually requires less parking than your zoning regulations were, similar number of units. And in some locations that may make sense, but it doesn't on Congress Street, because on Congress Street, there is no public transportation. There is no on-street parking. And again, this is so targeted to that area that I think you should avoid a regulation like that. And again, your POCD speaks to protecting environmentally sensitive areas, and this regulation really doesn't pick that up. So I guess from our standpoint and where I began my presentation when we were last here, the Merritt Parkway Conservancy spends a great deal of time and effort on trying to preserve the historic character of the award-winning Merritt Parkway, and I know that we're all trying to get places, but if you take a moment and you really look at the Parkway, it is a gem in Connecticut, and it can be a beautiful ride, usually. So, and this regulation really doesn't respect that and is targeted to plunking a larger development right against the right of way of the Merritt Parkway. I thank you for your patience, for your attention, and on behalf of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, we urge you to exercise the jurisdiction vested in this commission to deny this application.
Thank you, Attorney Green. Commissioner Braun?
I have a question for Attorney Green. You mentioned spots, I don't know if you mentioned spot zoning, but it seemed like you were describing spot zoning. We get differences of opinion all the time to our
I'm-
commission about spot.
I'm so glad you asked that question.
Can you explain spot zoning to us? I know I'm a lawyer, but you could have probably explained it much better than I can, so.
First thing is, I hear attorneys constantly saying that spot zoning is sort of it's aged out and it's no longer a concept in Connecticut. And spot zoning is really just that. It is providing zoning and assigning a zoning classification to a single property or a small group of properties. And it runs afoul of 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statutes, which is the enabling legislation, which allows commissions to adopt regulations, once again, of general application and not applications on a property by property basis. So it assures that land uses in individual zones are compatible throughout the zones. And so this does, in my view, present sort of a spot zoning issue, although I will temper that by saying that I'm not sure that the applicant, I think this may apply to other areas outside of those 5 blocks on Congress Street. And but again, spot zoning is alive and well, and I think this could be interpreted. I don't think there's any question, and I think, you know, everyone in the room knows that this is just directed at 1477 Congress Street. And so once again, I would, on that basis, I would also urge the commission to deny the application.
But other lawyers come to us and say there's no such thing as spot zoning. It's not outlawed. Could you just address that?
C. Miller versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Bridgeport, and it's a Brock case. And Judge Ratcliffe wrote a pretty good opinion. And I think it was, I'm not sure, maybe 5 years ago, and he goes through that. So there is no case that has overturned spot zoning, and it's kind of to some degree become more of a uniformity discussion. It's sort of become a uniformity discussion that is similarly situated properties in zones, and zones should be consistent, are generally conferred the same regulations. And to single out an individual property runs afoul of the enabling legislation in 8-2.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other comments? Any other questions?
All right, thank you, Attorney Green.
Thank you.
We'll go to public comments, starting with those in the room, but if there's anyone who wishes to be heard on this item who's joining remotely, please sign in, chat, and indicate you wish to speak.
You go first.
Hold up. First come, first serve. So if anyone wants to speak on this item, please just.
May I ask a question, a sort of procedural question of our staff, really quickly? Is this obligated to be notified, or was the town of Easton obligated to be notified? Like, is this within 500 feet of the Easton boundary? It seems like it would extend to Easton Turnpike, which is Fort Hill Road. Does that mean that Easton should be notified, or, and if so, was it notified?
I don't believe it was within 500 feet. I feel like we looked at this before.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, friends. This is Emily Howe, the Night Round Elm Street.
I'm sorry, the mic's not, we were getting feedback, so the mic's not on.
I'll turn mine off. I could hear her. Okay, there.
But now,
It's not the,
Turned it off.
it was having problems. You can just speak loud. It's
is it
okay.
on now?
No, it's
No,
not.
it's not on at all. I'm sorry.
There's a problem with the
Prop?
amplifier.
I like props. So, okay, so just keep going.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Emily Howe. I live on Elm Street. Attorney Green just walked you through the law. I loved it. I'll walk you through the math. Section 10.19 requires a parcel that is at least an acre within 1,500 feet of a state highway, not the Merritt or 95, and within 1,500 feet of a Merritt on-ramp. Apply that filter to the map. You get one cluster of parcels on one road. So before you vote, I'd ask the commission to confirm exactly which parcels qualify. We know the answer to this. We saw it in the last testimony. And it's a handful. It's like, what, 6? Is that right? 6 parcels. If the answer is Congress Street, more or less, that's not a zoning district. That's a zoning district with a return address. Second, the regulation uses the word elderly exactly once in section 10.19.2 and never asks anyone to verify it. No age verification, no biennial survey, no deed restriction, no reverter. No elevators required, no accessibility required. The reduced parking ratio is justified by the assumption that elderly people drive less. But nothing in this regulation requires elderly people to live there. If HOPA status is ever lost, and it can be lost permanently, this project operates as standard multifamily while keeping every concession granted on the senior housing premise. That is not senior housing. That is senior housing in costume. My third point, hydrology. The applicant submitted a report for a different project. 8 single-family homes on 31.63 acres in Monroe. That report concludes recharge exceeds demand 26-1. Apply the same methodology to a 1.7 acre parcel at the proposed density and the ratio inverts. Roughly 69% of available recharge consumed under normal conditions and a deficit under drought. The applicant has submitted as their own exhibit a study that demonstrates this density does not work on this lot. They then supplemented it with 2 EPA brochures, which themselves say, and I quote, "An evaluation of site-specific conditions is performed to determine the appropriate type of treatment system for each location." The applicant has submitted everything except the site-specific evaluation. 4, affordability. 3 numbers have been quoted to this commission. The Russo letter says 15%. The regulation text says 10%. Mr. Russo himself in this room said 0 because the project is under 10 units. The regulation governs, at minimum, the text needs to match the representation. At maximum, the commission should ask why a single project has produced 3 different affordability numbers. To summarize, 1 road, no enforcement, the wrong hydrology, and a moving target on affordability. That's not a regulation. That's an application in a regulation's clothing. I respectfully ask the commission to decline adoption of section 10.19 as drafted. Thanks.
Others wish to be heard, just come on up.
Hi, my name is Matthew Halleck. I live on Somerville Street here in Fairfield.
The mic doesn't work tonight. The amplifier is on the fritz.
Speak up.
Yes, sir.
My name is Matthew Halleck. I live on Somerville Street here in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I just want to bring a couple things to your attention. There was an amendment, you might have seen a letter a couple weeks ago. It was actually with Earth Day that 30 organizations sent to Connecticut Attorney General Tong about Earth First, the Green Amendment. It was signed by Sustainable Fairfield, Connecticut Audubon, many other leading groups. So, and it's all about the right for a healthy environment, above all else, Earth First. And the reason I bring that up is because we just got from the Metro Clog, the coastal site plan review that you might have seen last month. It came, it was a big thick deck revolved around our whole thing. And there's some major mistakes in there. And really, to speak subjectively, we got thrown under the bus by MetroCog regarding the maps and things that are in there. There's a lot of major mistakes, including with the POCD, which I've talked about before. The maps are wrong. And specifically with FEMA, they're referring to a FEMA map that they're downplaying the risk and what's in a flood zone right now, so they can change the code and create higher density housing. And if you look at, this is what they just submitted. You can't really tell on this one, but they're just sort of minimizing what's in a flood zone and the risk that we have. And meanwhile, we all know we've had 11 years of rising temperatures, rising seas. Fairfield is literally in the first wave of climate change. So this is very important to all of us. Here in reality, this is the FEMA map. I'm on the FEMA website right here. You can look it up, and it's kind of hard to tell, but this is all Fairfield, and this is the stupid train station, the one at Black Rock, and all up here with Ash Creek, and then right down here is all Fairfield. This is from, first of all, 2013. There has not been a FEMA study since 2013. And this is supposed to go in, and we're relying on this for another 10 years. This is dated information. All of this is in a flood zone. If you can look at it right here, going up to Ash Creek, all down here, Route 1, everything. This is all called like the high warning area. All the blue area is in a flood zone. The only area south of Route 1 that's not is Sasco Hill, right there. So they're denying the realities and the liabilities that we're facing right here in Fairfield. And if you look at insurance companies right now, they're not insuring in flood zones anymore. They've announced that.
Mr. Halliger, is this common, are you going to get to the application that's before us?
Is this for, no, this was just for that we're going to be submitting revisions on this. And we've been trying to get in front of you with this, and it's incumbent on you as the board to take this into consideration for all these developments that we're doing and all these buildings that we're doing. And we're specifically focusing on Commerce Drive and District 6 and that whole area and how it's being manipulated. And I insist that you would take this information into account when we do our plans and we do all of our planning, because right now they're throwing the wool over our eyes and they're denying the realities that we're facing. That's it.
Can I ask him a question?
This is not even relevant to the item that's before us. Anyone else on this item?
May I ask a question of Mr. Halleck?
We're not, his comment was not even relevant to the zoning regulation that we're currently in a public hearing on a regulation of it.
Well, I was trying to figure out if it relates at all to the flooding taking place, flooding based on river flooding, not just sea level rise. Because if it has to do with river flooding, we have, I believe, the wetland system that this Congress Street is adjacent to, comes out of Easton Reservoir, and it flows into Samp Mortar or Cricker Brook or both of them, and that is part of the headwaters of Mill River, which does go down to the coast. So I don't know if what Mr. Halleck was talking about had anything to do with rivers or just coastal flooding.
Absolutely, all four of the rivers.
In general, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Fairfield, all four of them are related. There's Sasco, Mill River, the Pine Creek area, and of course Ash Creek. So the four rivers all forming the coastal area.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the room wish to be heard on this item? Come on up.
Thank you.
Good evening. Is this like Board of Finance, you have to give your name and address and all that?
Yes.
Okay, Suzanne Miska, 123 Rygate Road. As you can tell, I've never actually sat in front of you. I think I've sent a lot of emails, but never sat in front of you, so thank you. Look, I'm not as eloquent as many of the other speakers on this, but I really have a problem with developers buying a plot of land and then asking for regulation to be written that allows them to do what they want to do using the keywords. Now, all of a sudden, this is something that could be construed as senior housing. You know, if you want to build something within the zoning regulations that you all have painstakingly been working on and revising over the last couple of weeks, that's one thing. But to continually have attorneys representing developers who come in as LLCs, so we don't know who they really are because it's impossible to dig through that, to then come in and say, I'm going to use all the keywords that you all want to hear, that it would fit affordability, it could be senior housing. You know, we're near the Merritt Parkway. First off, if you're near the Merritt Parkway, you're driving. If you're a senior, you need an elevator, okay? I know, my parents are seniors. They're gonna have to drive, which means you're gonna have to give them at a minimum one parking space. This whole application just seems like, yeah, if you look over here, it might be one thing, but this is really what we wanna build. And so I ask you that deny this. This makes absolutely no sense. I'm not sure that you're being really given the true value of what the intent of this developer really is. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room want to speak on this item? Is there anyone signed in online who wants to be heard? Hands up, nobody signed it. Again, if you are joining us remotely and wish to speak on this item, please indicate that in chat. Okay, we will close public comment on this. Attorney Russo, back to you for rebuttal.
Chair, Commissioners, good to be before you. Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzio LLC offices at 10 Sasko Hill Road here on behalf of the applicant. To start off with, just going through the comments made, particularly those from Attorney Green. He made a comment that you don't have regulations specific to an area, but you do have the Commerce Drive area regulations that is specific to a very limited area. So I don't think this, though it's worded differently and maybe defined differently, it's very similar. He referenced the case Miller versus Bridgeport P&Z, which was my case that I did lose to Judge Radcliffe. And the reason was because it was like the example I cited at the last hearing, which was that we were proposing a, I think it was an RC zone at that time in an area of Black Rock that was in a C of RB. And that is an instance where there might still be a spot zoning. I won't tell you why I think Judge Radcliffe was wrong on that, but that's the case he was referencing. Joel did bring up his case, if you remember from last time, which was Tillman versus Shell P&Z, which was about a single piece of property, which Attorney Green made a spot zoning argument, and he lost. And so, you know, and that is something I think what would be akin to here, in that it would not be spot zoning. Because I do think it's in line with your POCD. I'll go through that. You're designating a specific area, but you're allowed to do that under case law, in my opinion, and develop regulations for a specific area if it's in line with your POCD. And so, you know, I think that's the more indicative case that Joel mentioned. The radius, the way it's set is just set that way to set a definite limit. So it's clear and it has, it uses a point of reference. So it's clear what's within that boundary and what's outside that boundary. Regarding the age standard, again, that is something, because I know Commissioner Levy, you had asked where that originated from. It's to fit into the exception for the Fair Housing Act, because you cannot discriminate against by due to age, but there is an exception, which is the HOPA exception. And so we are mirroring the language of the HOPA exception, so we don't run counter to the Fair Housing Act. So I think it has to be stated that specific way. Attorney Green talked about things like connectivity, and proximity to something like a train station. Again, I made this point when, I initially started this application, which is that this amendment is giving an option on housing choice. If you would like to live in an area like where the Anchorage is, and you like the connectivity to sidewalks, to the train station and to restaurants, that's an option for you. This gives an alternative option in an area where maybe somebody is downsizing and they don't necessarily want to be in downtown Fairfield. They want to reduce the size of how much landscaping they're doing, but they like living up in this area of town and they want to remain there. And so it's giving an option in that. There's still the option that what Attorney Green's talking about is which is being somewhere downtown. But I think this is, I think this is a good option to present to elderly families. There was a comment from a member of the public about the age qualification if you didn't qualify to it. Well, if you didn't qualify with the requirements under this regulations with regards to the age restricted, a person being over 55, you would be in zoning violation and you would get a letter from Mr. Decker that you were in violation and you would have to deal with that. So I think if somebody was to violate this regs, that's how that would handle. Just a couple things. So since the last hearing, we submitted 2 additional EPA related documents. They're called green papers into the record, addressing decentralized wastewater treatment systems, such as septic systems. I don't want to belabor this point because I think we've talked about the septic system issue a lot. But Attorney Green made a point that septic systems are not appropriate for a higher density development. And I'm not disputing that. If you want to get 40 units to an acre, you're going to have to go with sewer. But what we're proposing is what I think falls in line with the gentle density discussed in the POCD, only 5 units an acre. And septic systems can handle that level of density. One of the challenges we're facing with 830G is that there are properties that are not currently served by sewer, but an applicant is able to say, all right, well, we'll bring the sewer to the property. And not only get the type of density Attorney Green is talking about, but now there are likely several additional properties along the way that now have sewer in front of them and have the potential to be developed more. So I think, what we're trying to do is bring this area within the regulations with something with a gentle density that is contemplated by the POCD. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to using septic systems, same as with sewer. But I have submitted documentation, including these papers that I recently submitted, that these systems can treat wastewater to levels protective of public health and water quality, and can comply with municipal and state regulatory codes. That comes from one of the papers. One of the papers I submitted also comments that decentralized wastewater treatment can support communities by responding to growth while preserving green space and by using the natural treatment properties of the soil. It also states that decentralized systems can be flexible and scaled to a desired size or footprint, and that they can be designed to meet specific growth goals through planning where and how the community will grow. Attorney Green also suggested that septic systems do not remove nitrogen. But that this document I submitted stated that advanced decentralized treatment systems can achieve treatment levels comparable to centralized wastewater treatment systems while minimizing the level of phosphates and nitrogen entering the groundwater. There are systems, I did some research on this. There are systems that do a better job of removing nitrogen. And again, I think this is something, if this were to be approved, somebody would come to you, they would submit a traffic study, they would discuss the septic, the size of their septic, how many bedrooms that can handle, what its possible impacts the environment. And these things would all be presented to you before you made a determination about whether or not, you think it's appropriate for an ARHD. Attorney Green mentioned Section 8-2, which specifically states that regulations should promote a housing choice. This is exactly what this amendment does. In his letter, he discussed lessening congestion of streets, which is also an 8-2. I think if you took the interpretation that Attorney Green takes in that letter, no development would ever be approved, because he's essentially saying that if you increase the number of vehicles that come out of a property, then it's not lessening the congestion of streets. That's not what that regulation is saying. What it is saying is that this commission can require a traffic study, so you can examine the roadways and intersections and determine what impact the development would have on traffic congestion. You can look at sight lines. You can determine whether there needs to be some improvements to the roadway to help traffic flow. So that's what that statute is saying. And again, that would be part of the, which would essentially be a zone change application. He also, in his letter, discussed a strategy listed in the POCD to maintain legacy neighborhoods, but he leaves out the second part of that strategy. And it states that this plan recognizes the preference to maintain the physical characteristics of our single-family neighborhoods. But the second part is this must be balanced with the need to explore opportunities to introduce gentle density that would not be disruptive to those characteristic, the character of those neighborhoods through appropriate design standards. That's exactly what this amendment is in fulfilling the POCD. It's exploring an opportunity to introduce gentle density. No project is being greenlit here. It's exploring an opportunity. And I don't think it's out of character. We've talked about some of, Greenfield, Hunt, Somerset, Stratfield Falls are all in this area. Your POCD is not required to say it has to be, we're going to introduce density. It has to be in exactly this area. It can say things like it does, which is explore opportunities for gentle density. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Ron?
I have a couple questions. First of all, regarding spot zoning, we get this all the time. We get dueling interpretations by lawyers about whether spot zoning is acceptable and whether something is considered spot zoning. Could you just address that in a little more detail than you did already? Because what Attorney Green is saying is whether or not this is spot zoning, the courts don't like spot zoning. So disregarding whether this is spot zoning, is spot zoning allowed in court?
Yeah, I think, and I was trying to go through that at the beginning. Zoning regulations used to be a lot simpler, and there was zone A, zone B, zone C, zone D. And spot zoning would be like I did in the Miller case that Joel cited, which was there was an area, I believe it was RB was the zone, and it was all around this property. And we proposed to change it to RC. And that was found to be spot zoning. And there was nothing in the POCD that said something akin to the things that I cited. But since that time, zoning regulations have gotten a lot more involved, I guess maybe you'd say, and you do look at specific areas. Like you might look at Commerce Drive and say, this is a particular area, we want to plan for it. And you do put something in your POCD like that. And so you're allowed to develop regulations about that specific area if it's in line with your POCD. And I think that, and that was supported by the other case that Attorney Green mentioned, which is the Tillman versus Shelton P&Z, which was a regulation that was proposed for a single piece of property. But again, commission found it was, or the court found that those regulations were in line with the POCD. And my argument is that this regulation is in line with your POCD. There's a lot of talk in your POCD about exploring alternative housing types. There's a lot of discussion about providing housing for elderly, and the issues that are caused by the fact that there's not enough housing for residents who are looking to downsize to move into. It creates a traffic jam because if they can't move out of and downsize, folks who are looking to move into their types of houses are also blocked. So it just has this chain effect. And again, I cited that section of the POCD that says that this commission can explore opportunities to allow gentle density. If this was proposing, the density that you would see down at Commerce Drive, I don't think it would fit in with it. But at 5 units an acre, it's considerably less than the density that you have in your DRD. And I do think it's in line. So
Well,
hopefully that answers your question.
And then just regarding the density that you just mentioned, I think last time I asked you how many units would be allowed on this parcel of 1477, which was about, what, 1.7 acres or something? Did you say there were 9 units that would be allowed?
9 units possible. But again, what would also determine that is, could you provide adequate septic for 9 units? And that would be part of the, the analysis that would have to be done when that specific property came in.
But that's,
You could approve every property but 1477 Congress. I mean, it's in your discretion. It's in your legislative discretion.
but, okay, so 9 units times 3 bedrooms would be 27 bedrooms. That seems like a lot, for the communal septic that you'd have to install, but, and then I'm trying to understand the regulations. So you're, as far as public hearings.
Commissioner Braun, if I could just respond to that.
Sure,
The- The septic analysis is actually going to drive the number of bedrooms. And so, because that's how you calculate, how many bedrooms can your septic support? So you might end up with less units because it can't support that many bedrooms.
You did have a plan, though, that you submitted to us. Was that a concept plan or for 1477? Did that show?
Yes, as an
9
example.
units?
Yeah, and that was 9 units. Each were 2 bedrooms.
And so that would be 9 times 2 is 18 bedrooms on the septic right on that parcel.
Yeah, based on the soil analysis we've done, we think a septic system on that property could support that many.
Okay, as far as public hearings, all that's required for somebody, for say 1477 to come in and say, we want to change the zone to be this is like an overlay zone, right? Of this elderly housing zone. All that's required is a concept plan at that point, and and we would not have to hold a public hearing, even though it would be for a change of zone. Could you explain that a little bit, how the regulation works?
We would hold a public hearing. I mean, we've always done it. This language is taken from, I think it's the TODP regs, TODD or TOD regulations. But it's just a mirror of that. So whenever we've come before this commission, we've had a public hearing on the zone change. But you have had to submit conceptual plans, elevations, and then, again, traffic study, septic analysis. I mean, really whatever type of study to see if you think the site's appropriate.
So basically, once we determine that this property, once you want to file, once you want to apply, the only time it would come before this commission would be for us to determine if that project or that property would be within this overlay zone, right? And after that, it would be an as of right development only reviewed by staff. It would not come before us for a public hearing for the project, for the site plan. It would only come before us to determine if that parcel should be within this elderly district.
Now, we always came forward with I mean, we'd have to go to wetlands, but then for P and Z, I think it's in the remainder of this regulation that.
I think it says we may hold a public hearing on a request to determine.
That's just for the zone change. That's just for the zone change. For the actual, it would go through your, I think your special exception permit process.
Does it say, I don't know if it says that, but I know other things we've done, like when we did the 5-plex regulation last year, that will not come before us unless there's a coastal site plan review. So we approved a 5-plex on a B zone, 15,000 square feet, and that will not, maybe Ms. Harrigan can correct me, but my understanding is that will never come before us unless there's a coastal component. And
just so you know, Commissioner Braun, we'd have no issue with stating that specifically as a requirement. And just while we're talking, I'm quickly trying to find
Yeah,
it, but no issue
Yeah, we're
with
looking
that.
at, yeah, I'm saying Congress Street, it seems to me, it should always have a public hearing if we're going to have multifamily development up on Congress Street, like where all the wetlands are and everything else. How else are we going to understand what the impact could be with stormwater? I mean, wetlands has their job, we have our job, and a part of our job is environmental. So, if we're not mandating to have a public, yeah,
Fully expecting with this amendment that we'd come back for the zone change to you, then we would, in this case, have to go to wetlands, and then would have to come back to you for a special exception.
well, I need to have that clarified. I have to understand, it doesn't seem to say that. It seems to say we may hold a public hearing on a determination of whether this parcel would qualify in this zone. So that would be like a zone change application, right?
Right.
So we may hold a public hearing. That should obviously be mandatory because we always have public hearings for zone changes. And even though right now, the state law has changed where it used to be if the owners of 20% of the land within 500 feet of a zone change filed a protest petition, they could force a supermajority before we could do a zone change. I think actually we have to have a public hearing by state law if there's a request for a zone change. And it's unfortunate that the state law changed. Protest petitions no longer really matter, but nevertheless, I think it has to be mandatory that there's public hearing. But then my other question is, if we did approve a zone change, allowing it into this elderly district, would there be a public hearing on the application, or would we only have a concept review in front of us for the zone change? And, we've discussed this quite a bit, I think, on this parcel last year, and not having a concrete site plan before us to determine if there would be environmental harm or problems to public safety from traffic. It's very difficult to determine if something should qualify for that type of development, because I don't think it comes back to us once we put it in that district. And if it is going to come back, it has to be spelled out, I think.
We have no issue with that. It's been embedded within the DRD regulation, so I
But
think.
it's differentiated from the DRD. There's a lot of differences with the DRD.
I mean, through you, Mr. Chair, it is the DRD requires the zone change and the application be filed at the same time. So it certainly, if the commission felt comfortable with these regulations and wanted to accept them, they would fall within that category where they would have to be treated the same way. That's the way that DRDs have always been done. So the zone change application comes at the same time as all of the site plan review.
I think, I'm trying to remember, but the language in here where it says zoning commission may in its discretion hold a public hearing on a request for determination that a parcel qualifies. I think it might have been able to have an informal hearing just to see if the parcel qualified, not to designate. Yeah, that was, I think that was.
It is within the.
It's just to determine if it qualifies, but you still 100% need to apply for the zone change and get the permit.
Other questions? Commissioner Monahan?
Why do you believe that this application, your parcel, is similar to Somerset and Stratfield Falls? What kind of similarities are you giving me there in terms of like the location being very far from one another? Their lots being completely, different in terms of how they're set up.
Well, I think again, it's this gentle density where there's higher density than what is around
Where?
that area. So if you go above the Merit, you're in a zone single family zone where there's a lot more area required. And these are in a lot, more consolidated of an area. Again, it's not proposing something even to the DRD level of 12 units per acre. It's 5 units per acre. So I think it's in line. I think it's in line with what's in the area.
Have you walked this lot?
Yeah, I've been by it. I haven't walked into it, but yeah, I've been by it many times.
And you see the topography of it and the location of it and how it's very far from those two sites that you're citing as similar.
Well, I think it's in the same relative area. They're not next door to each other, but there's one to the west of it, and then there's the other two are to the east of it. Of the particular area that you're talking about. And again, I think that's all part of the analysis that would go in as to how many units could a site like that support and keep the wetlands safe.
Are Somerville, Somerset and Stratfield Falls on septic systems or is serviced by sewers?
I believe they're sewer, but I don't know that for sure, but
Or
I think.
serviced by sewers. And the lots are substantially different in that half of this lot is in the flood zone and or has wetlands, and there's considerable setbacks. The topography of this site is all not level. I just don't see a septic system surviving for 5 to 9 units on the site, but
Yeah, and they have more units than we would have on a particular property. But I think at 5 units per acre can be supported by a septic system. But again, somebody's gonna have to submit their soil analysis, show you that they have good soils. It could be reviewed by your technical departments who might challenge those findings and tell you, no, they say it could fit a septic system that supports 18 bedrooms, but we think it supports only 12. And then, depending on how you vote, it might be reduced in density.
Anyone else? Commissioner Braun?
Another question about the I just looked up the HOPA law,
Yeah, the
Federal-
HOPA exception, yep.
the Federal Housing for Older Persons. So I know that you drafted this to sort of track the requirements of that law, which is that 80% of the units have to have one person over 55 living in it, which itself is problematic to me. It doesn't really seem like elderly housing to me. But I notice your regulation does not have requirements really to make it elderly accessible, things like I don't know, I'm Googling it, like single floor units, elevators, certain types of doorways that allow, walkers and wheelchairs, showers, ADA compliant bathrooms, lower countertops, emergency call systems, different types of door handles, et cetera, et cetera. So if for some reason you fall out of, you don't get enough senior people there and it stops being designated or doesn't qualify any more, then you would be violating HOPA if less than 80% have the 55 person. You also don't have things in here about verifying them on a frequent basis. And I've heard stories that some of the affordable housing in town is not really used by people that need affordable housing. So how would that all be monitored? It doesn't seem to be in the regulation that I could tell. And if it loses its status under federal law, well, then you can immediately no longer have that requirement. And then we just have a lot of dense housing up near the reservoir, basically. So how will that be handled by this regulation? Because I don't see that this regulation really makes it built for elderly people.
Well, I mean, you don't have the building design in front of you, but you'd have to comply with all the requirements of, the housing, the building code. So when somebody presented that, they would show how they complied. And again, if you violated 10.19.2 and everybody was below 55 years of age, everybody was below 55 years of age, they'd be in violation. And so the zoning violation could be issued.
Well, they have to find out
Enforceable by
first.
the town. I mean, you could take them to court if they violated.
Right, it's just a concern that there doesn't seem to be any requirements here to make it for seniors. There's nothing in here that says this is real senior
It says
housing.
each unit will be occupied exclusively by elderly families consisting of one or more persons, one of whom is 55 years of age or over.
But there's no design elements.
Which is copying that HOPA language to be able to qualify for the exception.
But there's no design elements required and there's no verification required in your regulation.
I mean, if the commission wanted to add that you had to submit an annual verification, I don't see any issue adding that as a condition. We'd be happy to accept that.
I know in affordable housing plans, they're like 20 pages long with tons and tons of material in them.
I haven't seen it, but I mean, we'd be happy to accept it, so I don't want to belabor it.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Attorney Russo. So on your end?
All set on my, thank you for your time.
Bring up this item, thank you. Next is 845 Mill Hill Terrace, a re-subdivision application of OHI Asset Southport LLC for 4 lots in a Residence A zone.
Mr. Chairman, I just ask a question. So there's a lot of people here this evening on item, let's call it item 6, which is 354 people on Avenue, and I think there's a lot of community in that, and I've just been retained today on that as well. And I'm wondering, I note that it's 5 after 9, and I know that Mr. Carey has a presentation. I've talked with Attorney Fallon, and he has another matter before this. So I'm wondering what the commission's preference is on potentially.
Are you looking to move 6 up?
No,
No.
I have no objection. I think realistically, I'm hopeful we can do the Genesis dealership tonight, but I don't think we'd probably reach the peak wet matter anyway, so.
You want to just call that now and postpone that to the,
2 weeks, we can come back. And I'll give Mr. Green and I an opportunity to talk as well.
And just so that for the benefit of the public, Attorney Fallon, if the matter were called, Attorney Fallon would present and the public would have to come back anyway to offer public comment. But that way, the
I mean,
public,
yeah, we certainly wouldn't get to, I don't think, to public comment.
so this way,
If you're going to also be commenting in response to the presentation.
I hope to, and but this way the public can leave now and not have to sit another hour.
All right, so.
That's fine with me.
Okay, since both parties are in agreement on that, Sarah, I think 526, we can put it on and see where it falls.
We can, do you want to mention the other item that's also being
Yeah,
requested to move to 526?
yes. Okay, so we will move that to 526. Thank you
Thank you,
both.
Mr. Chairman.
And then the other item, just to skip ahead for 1 second, apologies, is item number 4, which is zoning regulation amendment, another application of Russo and Rizzio LLC on behalf of True Design and Development LLC. That's also been requested to postpone to May 26th. So we can postpone both of those items to the 26th. Go ahead.
So I'm very concerned because we have the conservation and parking management districts that we also have to speak about. And I know a lot of people are also very interested in that topic. So I would like this to be heard before the other 2 items on the 26th, so that it's not again on the bottom of the agenda when it really is a priority for the town. It's in the order. Should be discussed earlier in the evening so that it's not continually pushed to the next.
Well,
We have a clock ticking.
Continually push. With all due respect, we've had 2 public hearings on this, so this is the 3rd public hearing. I'm not sure what you're getting at because we're giving this ample time. This is getting more time than most items get from a public hearing perspective.
No, because I specifically asked staff if we, for certain things, and we still don't have them. And I think that, to your point, I'm happy to read what I sent, to staff asking for specific maps to be made based on the outlines that Commissioner Braun and I prepared. That, Commissioner Randolph indicated not appropriately laid out. We had asked staff to lay those out for us so that those maps coincide, so we do have something to vote on. So I'm just asking for that to be pushed up as a priority because we do have a clock ticking and we have laws that are kicking in July. And we have a certain.
I'm not sure,
time to
again,
vote to the state.
I don't know what laws are kicking in July. We already have parking regulations. There's not some, something that magically happens on July 1st in Fairfield. We have parking regulations that comply with the law. So there's this weird notion that on July 1st, something magically is going to happen in Fairfield. That's just not the case. So.
Can I?
Commissioner Brock. Go ahead.
Okay, so I sent an update email today I didn't run it by Commissioner Monahan, but I kind of sent it on both our behalf because we did put that request in on March 23rd to ask staff to take the parking circles we drew using a cell phone app that equaled 1.2 miles, but obviously I don't have GIS software, so we could not designate it by street or go ins and outs with, portions that should or shouldn't be included. It generally ran along the post road, much of the beach area and some north of the post road to protect the center. So we don't have more detail on that. And I think we need more detail. And I think also we need just more information and data. This is not like a regulation that somebody's asking us to do for their project. This is us redesigning the downtown of our town. Once July comes around, the state law prevents us from requiring any parking at all for any residential up to 16 units. I think it was 15. I think it's going to be 16 if the governor doesn't veto the update to that bill. But 15 or 16 units, our only wiggle room so far was to make that be mixed use. So we would be able to require commercial on the ground floor, but there could be from between 2 and 16 units above that we would not be able to require any parking for at all, unless we designate up to 8% of our town, which is about 2.5 miles or so, that we could require parking. And it bumps against the commercial to residential conversion, which also takes place on July 1st as of right. So if somebody wanted to convert a building in downtown after July 1st to mixed use, they could do so without us being able to have a public hearing. All they would have to do is follow our regulations, which we recently expanded to allow 52-foot tall buildings and less setbacks, et cetera. So conceivably, somebody could sell their building down anywhere in the post road and put in for a mixed use development with 2 to 16 units and 0 parking, except for the commercial end. So
Mr. Brown, we're out of order right now.
It's important.
It's
what I'm
important.
saying
Out
is
of
we
order.
need-
I let you make your point.
I'll wait till we reach it on the agenda. I was trying to make a point that we need to discuss. I was trying to counteract your point that we need to discuss this and we need more data. I don't need to take up time on someone else's hearing. I can wait till we get to it tonight. I'll make the same point.
Just respect.
Going to make a point of order, are you?
Oh, I just a brief comment. Commissioner Braun, we need to manage our time and there's a room full of people here. And respectfully, I can, excuse me, you're out of order. I can help you do the map. Just call me. I will help you with the map sometime this week.
I'll discuss that when we get to it on the agenda. I've taken about 45 seconds, so I'm going to stop talking now. Go on with the agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Go ahead.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be as quick as possible. This is a bit administrative. So I'm Brian Carey. I'm here on behalf of OHI Asset Connecticut Southport LLC. We were previously here before you for subdivision approval, 4-lot subdivision approval. That was granted in October. Previous to that, we did receive approval through the Inland Wetlands Commission. As part of the original approval from Wetlands, they requested a conservation easement be placed over 3 of the 4 lots to prevent wholesale clearing of trees. We had agreed to that. You did review the map with that conservation easement included as part of the subdivision map. At that time, the Conservation Commission was trying to draft a new conservation easement template document. So as we were trying to file the record map, there were certain languages that was contained within that template of the conservation easement that would require us to net out the total square footage of the easement that we had granted on each of the individual lots. So we are still going back with the Conservation Department and the Commission because we don't feel that that is a legally allowed to occur. That is more of a zoning function. Right now, you guys do not require that. So we are trying to amend the easement language and work with them. We're actually not the only applicant or property owner that's in this position in the town right now. So this is a couple other approved projects that are actually running into the same issue. We've worked through all of the we worked with the engineering department to come up with the easements for the drainage easements. we're currently still working with the Conservation Commission to address that. We are not able to file the record map until we have the easement filed. So unfortunately, it's become a bit of a chicken and egg thing. And it's cost us a great deal of time. That being said, the approval expired, so we're back here just asking to reapprove the original subdivision approval. We're not asking for any changes. It's the exact same maps. What has been submitted into your record is what was previously approved, and we're just asking for that to be reapproved so that we can continue to work with the Conservation Commission so we can record this record map.
Can you just explain what the chicken and egg situation, how long do you expect it to take before it's?
I'm hoping within the next month, we get a resolution on this. The town attorney has been brought into the dialogue. And again, it's an open dialogue with the Conservation Commission right now. Basically what there's a couple things, but what's really the impetus of this is that they're saying for the amount of easement on the property, that we have to shrink the building, shrink the building accordingly because it will impact our coverage calculations. So we're actually having to net out the easement area for the entire lot. So obviously, if that was the original case, when we went in front of the Conservation Commission, we would not have agreed to, particularly to that easement agreement, understanding that there's a financial penalty that's going to be basically borne by each lot, because the size of the house that ultimately was approved would ultimately get smaller, and obviously, that we wouldn't have agreed to it at that point. That was not made aware to us. Generally, conservation easement is normally agreed to by both parties before it's signed. We were not, nothing against them, but we were not brought into the Conservation Commission dialogue while they were developing this template. And again, we are not the only people with approved projects that are in this position right now. Generally, in the past, there has been a couple-page document that has been circulated and approved by the town attorney that is used as a template. Over the years, that's been modified. But in this case, it's much more broad than it had been in the past. And it's not something that I'm not an attorney, but it's not something that the applicant's counsel would agree for them to sign either. We probably go back and start the process again, because that is that significant in financial reduction in the overall subdivision. Not to mention, as part of the first subdivision application, we had 5 lots. We ended up reducing it to 4 lots. After that was rejected, denied by the Wetland Commission. You probably remember we were here debating the open space acquisition portion of it. So unfortunately, this has taken a great deal of time for the applicant. So we're trying to just really put this to bed and move on. It is a 4-lot subdivision, which under the subdivision regulations is as of right.
Commissioner Braun?
Yes, I remember this came to us for the subdivision, so we approved the map, but I recall at that time, didn't they move the easement over to the side of the road from where it was on the back? Is that what you're talking about here?
No, I'm talking about
No.
the approved plan that you guys approved, that I was subsequently given a conservation easement template from the Conservation Commission that we can't basically execute because it's creating a hardship for the applicant by netting out the lot, the square footage of the easement areas for each lot. It's not something we would agree upon. Basically, what I'm asking you to do right now is go back to your original decision from October 2025 and just restart the clock so that we can administratively file the map.
And what is the clock? How much?
So it's 90 days from your approval, and I think if I come back, I can get it up to 180. I don't intend to do that. If I don't do that, there might be another person sitting in this chair next time. So I'm looking to put this to bed and work with the commission to resolve this situation.
Will conservation change what we approved in terms of where the easement is and the size of the easement?
No, we're not asking them to do that. We're asking to file the record map that's been approved by this commission. We're not asking for any changes from this commission or any subsequent commissions.
And so conservation wants to change what we already approved, but didn't they already approve it before we did
No, we're
this?
having a problem executing a legal document on the land records from Conservation Commission, conservation easement that we are not agreeing to the way it's been drafted with the commission at this point. Has nothing to do with changing anything. It has to do with them asking us to agree to something that was not provided during the original approval.
So it's not changing the footprint of the easement, it's changing the language of the easement
Correct.
document. Okay.
Any other questions? Anything else from you? All right.
Thank you very much.
Let me just ask, anyone want to be heard on this item when joining remotely? Sign in the chat. All right, we'll close the public comment on this.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to 26 and 65 Commerce Drive, an application by Attorney John Fallon on behalf of BAR Commerce Drive LLC for a special exception and coastal site plan application for auto sales showroom repair facility for Genesis with an additional automotive storage lot, includes excavation of over 250 cubic yards for flood storage. Industrial.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is John Fallon. I am here tonight representing the applicant, which is an LLC maintained by the Police Auto Group. The lease has had a long presence here in Fairfield. They own and operate the Hyundai dealership and an existing Lexus facility, which we are, with your approval, seeking to dramatically approve. There's three applications that are part of the application tonight. One is the special permit for excavation and fill. One is a special exception for the automobile dealership, which of course is permitted in the zone. And the last is the coastal site plan review per section 33. You have your report from Mr. Mullen recommending approval with conditions. You also have a positive letter, commendatory letter, I would say, from the DEP, examining a few conditions as well, which all of those conditions, as referenced by Mr. Mullen and the DEP, we certainly consent to. They're actually generally embodied in our plans already. 26 and 65 Commerce Drive is located in the Design Industrial District. It's basically on the Fairfield-Bridgeport line. Indeed, the portion of the property that is in Bridgeport has already been subject to a application and approval by the city of Bridgeport for a CAM approval, and that is part of your record as well. It's currently 26 Commerce Drive is currently contains a one-story automobile dealership, which is now vacant. It was formerly some years ago a Mercedes-Benz dealership. 65 Commerce Drive has been historically used for inventory storage, parking for the adjacent dealership. We're very excited about this new proposal. As you'll see, I don't know if we have a rendering up there. Sorry. Matt, you might help. Okay, we lost the rendering, but one picture being worth 1,000 words, I thought that would be a good.
You said Mercedes, it's the old Infinity.
It's the old Mercedes dealership, I think, correct?
Infinity?
It was Infinity?
It's Infinity.
Thank you. I get my luxury cars mixed up. Okay, so we'll get that up on the screen for you, but this is what we're proposing. It's a new location for our sales and services, as shown. We hope you will agree. It's a very attractive addition to the area. The establishment of this beautiful new Genesis dealership at this location, I think, is going to have a very significant benefit on the economic vitality of the area and that section of the town as a whole. It's going to provide significant additional full-time jobs than the current dealership does. Will provide a significant enhancement and improvement relative to the current conditions of the property, as you'll hear in a minute, in terms of site drainage and the like. It represents a significant investment in our community by Belize Auto Group and this prestigious luxury automobile dealership. And it's going to provide a very state-of-the-art engineered focused compliance with all applicable FEMA standards. And that's going to have a great benefit as well. You have a letter in addition in your record from Mr. Mark Barnhard, the Director of Economic Development, endorsing the development. So let me present our presenters. Standing here with me is Mr. Jim McTeague. Jim is a senior project manager for Arthur H. Howland and Associates. He's going to review with you briefly the proposed site engineering and compliance with all applicable FEMA guidelines and the provisions of your zoning regulations. As you will hear, this will include provisions for dry proofing of the entire building as proposed. A flood-proof certification and flood-proof management plan have also been submitted to you, and they have been reviewed and approved by both your commission staff and the DEEP. And he'll also talk briefly about the provisions for compensatory storage. And again, we've submitted a compensatory storage fill statement, and that's part of your record. After he is finished, Mr. Eric Limbo of Claris Design Build, our project architect, will take a brief opportunity to review the architectural plans with you. So, Jim.
Good evening. The site is located in AE 15 flood zone, and it's also partially located in a floodway. And so because it's in a floodway, we're not allowed to fill. However, we do need to fill minimally to get into the building for handicap access across the front here and on the side. We've kept it to an absolute minimum. We're filling about 350 cubic yards here, and we're displacing some water for the building. This portion of the building is flood compliant, and this portion of the building, this is the service area, and the new showroom here, we are going to flood proof as John was saying. FEMA allows us to dry flood proof up to 3 feet. And so to compensate for that filling and water displacement, at 65 Commerce Drive, we're carving out an equal area of fill at approximately at the same elevation to compensate for that. So there'll be zero increase in the flood event to any property in any direction. On the site here at 26, we're doing about a 200 square foot increase in impervious coverage. There are existing drainage systems, and we're going to enhance that with the oil water separators on the lines before any of that water gets discharged. As for 65 Commerce Drive, we're doing infiltration. We're doing a gravel bed, and over the gravel bed, we'll have permeable pavement, and the surrounding site will have regular pavement. So the water will sheet flow into this area and will stay into the system. And then only when you get a storm that's greater than a 100-year storm will it discharge out of the level spreader. And so we're quantifying for water quality and peak storm event in this area as well too.
So
this portion of the site is in Bridgeport. The Ash Creek used to be here, and it got moved when the highway was built, but this was in Bridgeport. The rest of this is in Fairfield.
And Bridgeport has approved their campsite plan. I should commend the staff, Mr. Mullen and Penneline. We've worked closely with them to make sure we came up with something that was not only attractive aesthetically, but most importantly, very strong in terms of FEMA compliance. And as I said, I think that's evidenced by the approval already in place from the city of Bridgeport, the report that you have from Mr. Mullen, and the DEP letter dated May 1st, 2026. And as I said, again, the conditions that they referenced in those two documents are already either subsumed in here, or we certainly agree to them as a standard and would be expecting to do that anyway. So Mr. McTeague is here. We're running a little against the clock. I think what I do is have Mr. Limbo give you an overview of the architectural design. Well, I can do my Vanna White if you can put it up here. Because we don't have them on the TV screen, where are they?
Yeah, sorry.
I'll hand them to you when you.
Yeah, sorry. This here is the existing building as it sits today. Everything in red will be coming down. We'll be demolishing. This will be existing service will remain, existing parks will remain. And then this will be the new area of the Genesis will be here. It's the showroom, the customer lounge, and the service reception area with some new bathrooms in the break in the service. This remains pretty much like it was in the Infinity dealer, same number of lifts. We are adding a alignment ramps. Roof plan, existing roof to remain. We're just re-roofing new RTUs new roof and solar panels on the roof there. And then these are the elevations. It's curtain wall glass for most of it, or have a concrete stem wall for the flood proofing. And then we'll have ACM, gray ACM panels on the bench here in the service drive area. And then EVIS along the back, existing over the block that's there now, the existing CMU. And that's basically wraps the entire building around all four sides. Similar. Similar to that. This is just other view of the back and front and side. This is the existing building here, and then this would be the new portion. Yeah, but that's how that is. This is how I do. That'll be one view. This will be the other view.
So Eric and Jim are here if you have any questions. We're very excited about this. As I said, I think it's a massive enhancement, both environmentally and aesthetically, to a much needed area of town. I know the city of Bridgeport, although primary development was not within its borders, we're very excited about it too, in terms of its aesthetic qualities and the improvements in terms of flood management and flood storage. Great application for the town, continues to show that Fairfield is an extremely attractive destination. Our economic vitality is very strong. And with the help of your staff and the DEP, we came up with sort of a poster child, I think, for a FEMA compliant site, a FEMA compliant project on a site that, you know, had a lot of things to deal with. So we're excited about it. Be pleased to answer any questions.
Any trees?
Yeah, do we have the landscaping plan?
The landscape plans for both sites, and we're
Could you
proposing
put the
trees.
landscaping plan up there? And maybe you could walk through that, Jim, or just to kind of talk about it. What's the drawing number on that?
That's the last two in the here as well.
Okay.
So.
Mr. Kenny's.
So this is 65 Commerce Drive.
15 of, oh, you got it. 15.
And we're,
What's that? What's the, that's, what's? the-
planting plan.
Yeah. There's two planting plans. There's one for 65 Commerce.
Yeah.
Which is,
We've worked in landscape islands into the proposed parking area, and we're densely vegetating them. And then we're preserving the entire buffer along the Ash Creek as requested by Connecticut Deep and Bridgeport as well. And then this is the plan for 26 Commerce. And we've worked in landscape islands in as many places as we can, all over the site. And then we're redoing all the trees along the front here as well too. And then we're adding street trees along 65 here where we can.
Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Commissioner Randolph.
Yeah, so just with regard to the trees, I think, what are we, one tree per 20 spaces?
1 tree per 10
Per 10.
for parking lots with over 20 spaces.
Yeah, so it looks like you're a little bit shy on the, I'll say the Ash Creek side. Next page.
Well, this is new inventory storage and employee parking. So it's not per se like a parking lot. It's really just storage of new and used inventory.
Right, but it has the word parking in it.
Yeah, but it's not parking in the sense of it's like a shopping plaza park.
I know, but it says parking and I think we're 1 per 10 per space, and it would be good if you apply with the intent of that regulation.
we know, I don't, no argument there, but I just want to make, do we know how many trees that we are adding on both sites? Because I know from time to time, we've interpreted the parking trees to be, they can be dispersed, so. Okay,
We have 19 trees on this planting.
that's on,
I think that's for the whole.
While they're looking, I think I see you've got 3.5-inch caliber trees, which is great. You've got red maples, which is great. Did Mr. Kenny do this one?
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Kenny. So if you don't have space on there for the trees, I would ask, and we did this, I think, did we do was the other one a Genesis where they planted?
No, it was a Hyundai.
Hyundai, yeah. So it would be great if you couldn't fit them on the site, whether you could make contributions to the town if you can't fit them there. So I understand it if you can't fit them there. All right, so.
That's fine.
Yeah, so,
Which we did do, now that you mentioned it, I think, on the Hyundai.
you know me well enough. My two issues are trees and lights. So we've got some pending dark sky ordinances.
We have a lighting plan.
Yeah.
We have a lighting plan.
A lighting plan. And this is, it's a very thorough set. It's good architecture, a thorough set, very thoughtful. I'll let Commissioner Braun ask about the wetlands issues. I won't do that, steal her thunder, but if you could make sure, when you spec the fixtures, you comply with our intended dark sky ordinances. What's the pole height?
Can you pull that up? Yeah, this plan is oversized, so I can put it on the board.
List it, yeah.
Sort of pop quiz you, but that's what we do. Are we 15 or 20 now? For 15-foot pole.
I think it's
15-foot poles.
15, he said 15.
We're at 15.
15. Excellent. Thank you so much. And so there'll be, I know it's not in the ordinance yet, but we're going for full cutoff. Dark sky compliant. Yeah. And I know this area looks like, a space station, but now we have to get there for that. So thanks so much. Yes, Ron.
Commissioner Braun?
Yeah, so I looked at your wetlands delineation and no inland wetlands were found, although it's very, obviously it borders on the tidal wetland. So can you just explain again how you're protecting the tidal wetland? I know DEP is involved more than it is now because you're not really expanding impervious surface all that much, maybe 200 square feet or so. And yeah.
I'd be glad to speak to that. At 26 Commerce, we have about a 200 square foot increase. There is an existing wall here between the edge of the parking lot and the Ash Creek, and we are not going past that. From the wall over, there is some existing vegetation in here, and the Ash Creek is tidal. So in this area, we're not going towards Ash Creek at all. And then as for the for 65, we have only gone to the edge of the existing vegetation that's currently existing. And we're not going into that vegetation at all. This is also Ash Creek continuing, no inland wetlands. And so we're preserving that whole bank of existing vegetation and only working with areas that have already been disturbed. And then incorporating additional landscape islands.
So DEP is happy because what then? You're doing something that they like.
We're protecting the existing vegetated buffer along the Ash Creek on both sides.
You're not making it better, you're just not making it worse. Is there
We're not
anything you
making
could
it
do?
worse, but we are enhancing it in places.
Okay, you are enhancing, you can't really enhance it distance wise but you're enhancing the plantings?
We're providing additional landscape places that don't currently exist.
Yeah, but you're not impervious surface is what I'm trying to say, so, okay. yeah.
DEP in their letter of May 1 says we commend the applicant for submitting a thorough and detailed plan that includes
Yep.
of course, provisions to decrease risks of life and property in a flood event. And then
Okay.
they make the recommendations that they did, which we're fine with.
And I know that conservation does not have jurisdiction because they only have regulatory jurisdiction over inland wetlands, which are freshwater wetlands, and this is tidal at this point. But sometimes I always like to hear from them because they are responsible for our tidal wetlands restoration projects around town, maybe not right here, but I know they do some things in Ash Creek. Do they have any input at all into this or any thoughts?
We had a code review meeting on this project. Those notes should be part of your record.
Yep.
Participated in the code review and had no comments,
Yeah,
other than the fact that they didn't have jurisdiction.
they said that no jurisdiction on the project. I brought it to them.
But they were aware of the project and its details, and they did attend the code meeting, or at least got the plans and sent a memo in. I can't remember which.
So presumably they would have said something if it's someone interfere with any of their restoration projects. I don't know what they're doing in Ash Creek.
Right.
But okay, thank you.
Correct. Questions?
All right, that all from you, Attorney Fallon?
That's all. I thank you for your time. It's a long evening and we appreciate your patience with us. Excited project, and we hope you'll agree that it's going to be a nice addition to our business community. And we thank you.
That'll conclude the applicant's presentation. Anyone who wishes to be heard on this item? Anyone joining remotely who wishes to be heard? No one? All right, we'll close public comment, on your end.
Thank you very much.
Public hearing. Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Thank you all for your time
Thank
tonight.
you. Thank you very much.
And then we will go to our last item, which is continuation of the public hearing on section 25.13.4 conservation and parking management districts. I don't think I need to read all that. So we left off having another discussion on this, received public comment. Obviously, there's not resolution on how to proceed. There's still the 4 areas under consideration. I think clearly the commission needs to, I guess, come to some sort of consensus on a direction to go in, at least before we can proceed to having some sort of vote on this. So I'll just open it. I see Commissioner Braun's ready to jump in. So Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
I just had a thought. So we've heard, rather than debate right this minute over which area makes sense, I would like to collect a little bit more information so that our whole commission could be, well informed of the pros and cons of any area, these 4 or maybe other areas. I don't think we have adequate data, especially since not protecting the downtown could have severe consequences to our downtown. That's my opinion. But I would really like to have us collect some more information. So, for example, I've heard, again, 4 arguments in favor of not preserving parking for up to 15 units of residential in the downtown. Once the 15 or 16 unit parking ban goes into effect on July 1st, and also once the commercial to residential conversion as of right goes into effect on July 1st. So both those things happening at the same time are concerned that we should do something. And I would like to have whatever we do choose to be preserved, by July 1st. And we just have to figure out the best place for that. We have over a month to figure it out. And I would like to suggest that we get some more data. And I did speak to Commissioner Randolph offline, and he did talk to Mark Barnhart. I would like to invite Mark Barnhart to come here for some Q&A on what he feels. And Commissioner Randolph could say what their conversation was, but I would like to invite him here. I also spoke to somebody, a town resident who actually has software that I didn't have a chance to really go through, but he actually drew some very detailed, pretty much GIS level mapping for me, which I will forward you. He actually has his own software where we could sort of fool around with it without having to use whatever the town uses for GIS. Because I did notice, so I drew something with an app I downloaded on my phone. Obviously, it's not nearly detailed enough. It was to give an idea of what 4% of our town could look like, but it clearly does not outline streets and areas. It's just a circle. That's all I could do. And then the 2 zones that the staff proposed also were not detailed enough. They didn't really, they're both straw man ideas that we could discuss to talk about the general areas. But it would be nice to have something we could play around with. And the software that I looked at, they collect all the layers by parcel. You could get parcel numbers. You could also find a way to omit areas that we don't have to worry about development, like town-owned property, schools, cemeteries, perhaps large developments that are already multifamily, where we could carve those out of our zones, of our proposed parking preservation zones. So that would give us more space to include in it that we do have to worry about. So I would like to suggest a few things that for the next time we meet on this, we invite Mark Barnhart or perhaps this person who does data and that software. And I'm going to send you, I asked him to send me an email describing it. And I'm going to forward that to everybody tonight. And also I know that there's a member of the public that spoke last time who put together a whole lot of data in terms of surveys and analysis, also based on parcel types to sort of help us understand where the risk is. And there, again, I talked to Jeff, to Commissioner Randolph about this. There's really two things we're looking for at the high level. One is, where's the likely place where we could have multifamily development, whether it's by commercial conversion or just multifamily development, 2 to 16 units, anywhere in town, likely or possible to happen. And of that, where is the worst place for overflow parking? So intuitively, Commissioner Monahan and I felt we've got to preserve the downtown, because many bad things can happen if there's inadequate parking. It could interfere with businesses, et cetera. And we also felt that if we could draw the 8%, it's really 8% when you add up both of them, sort of adjacent, you could stretch out a big part of the downtown center and extend it very far down into the beach area, which is also an area of concern. More for duplexes, perhaps, because it's a B zone where duplexes are allowed, but there's always parking problems down there. So rather than continually argue and debate over where it should be, I think I'd like to get more data, because I've heard 4 arguments in favor of not protecting parking downtown. And I'd like to have some background information on all of those. One is there a demand? There's a demand for no car living. And the other one is, developers will not get financing or be able to market if they don't have adequate parking. Another one is, there are other areas of town that are more important to preserve parking. And the other one is, the downtown is old. It was built before cars. And if there's a fire or a casualty loss, it would not be able to be restored or replaced with any parking required at all. So I would challenge all of those, but not tonight. I'd like to have us invite some people here perhaps next time. I mean, this is why we did have our planning sessions. And this is significant, because we have a difference of opinion on our commission over people who feel it's critically important to preserve parking in our downtown, and other people who feel we absolutely should not preserve parking in our downtown. And before we make that decision, I'd like to get more data from outside people to support any of those, or maybe there's other areas that are more important. I've heard, Tungus Hill, I've heard Black Rock Turnpike area. I'd like to get more data before we make this type of decision. We have a month and a half before both those aspects of the housing law go into effect. And that's my time frame.
Commissioner Braun, I think, I don't know if the commission had a chance to see it, because I think it came in pretty late, but
Yeah, I didn't send the one from the IT person.
I'm sorry, that I wasn't even talking about that, but that.
Oh,
I knew
okay.
you had
Yeah.
So I will just note that Commissioner Braun sent late in the day, so it didn't
I
have.
apologize.
That's okay.
Those are things
So
there.
there was a letter submitted by Commissioner Braun to the record, but I was actually referring to a letter from the Economic Development Commission that I think sort of gets at what you were speaking to. So I think we can talk about I don't know when Mr. Barnhart is available, but we can talk about getting an invite to him for a future meeting. I don't know what he'll actually be able to speak to. I think part of what the Economic Development Commission spoke to was collecting more data. So I don't know what they actually have, but we can figure out what makes sense.
And I'm going to forward to you the email right now. Can I just send it to the commission? You'll get it tomorrow, but that I got from the person who has an IT program that we could actually perhaps use and fool around with, or maybe he'll let us try it out. It's pretty cool.
Send that to Ms. Harrigan, or just so make sure it gets circulated properly.
I'm sending it right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Capozzi.
In the few minutes, thank you. In the few minutes we have left, I would strongly advocate that we hear from these nice people who've spent their entire evening with us. And the commissioners stop talking, because we've heard the arguments ad nauseum from each of us. So I would really love to hear from these lovely people.
Go ahead, Edric. I already told you to go.
Yeah, so this is just some information. So I've been talking to Commissioner Braun, and just a few things. So I spoke to Mr. Barnhart, And I know there's some interest in a study. He mentioned that MetroCogs, which is essentially the equivalent of the county planning organization. We don't have counties here, we have MetroCogs. Potentially could help us with the study. Did he talk to you about that?
Yes, yes.
So.
I think,
Let me just go through my things and you can.
This is the Economic Development Commission meeting.
MetroCogs can help us with the planning study. That will take some time because it takes time to engage a consultant, do the study. But that is an option in response to Commissioner Braun's request to have study. So I did talk to Mr. Barnhart. Secondly, I did talk to Mr. Barnhart generally, and I know there's a lot of concern over an avalanche of change here. According to Mr. Barnhart, he can speak to this when he comes in. There, to
Well,
his.
let's let him, if he's.
There's no pending applications. There's no pending applications. And then lastly, actually, two more things. I talked to Commissioner Braun about B zones. Just for people to kind of reflect on. A B zone allows for 2, potentially up to 5 housing units, as of right. So Commissioner Braun and I talked about the potential impact of B zones, and you got to look at the map to see where they are, but it's where 2-family houses are in. So that's potentially an issue where people could put in 2 to 5 houses and have no parking. So that's something that Commissioner Braun and I have been talking about. And I spoke to Commissioner Delgado about this too. That's something that we're also weighing as a concern. And then lastly, on mapping, I sent a note, Commissioner Braun and Commissioner Monahan just now. Maps are easy. They're super easy. We don't need any extra software. We can use QGIS, we can use Google Earth Pro, or can use the MetroCogs map, and I offered to help them draw a map, and it should just take us an hour. So you guys, if you have time, I can help you do that. So, Commissioner Monahan.
So I also want to note that Mr. Barnhart did send a letter today saying that he is in support of the 2 mitigation districts, the Southport CPMD and the Fairfield Beach and Fairfield Center North CPMD. We understand that if adopted, these regulations would require proposed developments with 16 units or fewer with designated conservation and traffic mitigation districts to provide at least 1 space for each studio and 1 bedroom unit and 2 spaces for each dwelling with 2 or more bedrooms. The Economic Development Commission is supportive of these proposed changes and these 2 proposed districts. Also notes that he would consider conducting a downtown parking study to inventory existing parking, identify opportunities to better leverage these parking facilities, and to determine the need for additional parking. I believe we already have a list that you created, Mr. Randolph, Commissioner Randolph, of all of the parking lots in town through C2 reform and your position with C2 parking reform.
Not in a position. I
know you're-
assisted on the map.
You assisted with that. Your name is on the map. So is there a way you can just send us what are the private lots and what are the public lots based on that map that you created? Is there an outline of the private lots?
I'll have to
and the
look.
Public lots?
To look.
Lots? Okay, because that was not clear when I was studying the map.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
through you. So I think Commissioner Randolph referenced MetroCog having certain resources available to the town. And I was at MetroCog for a meeting. The executive director, Matt Fulda, did mention that they have actually surveyed through something else that they had done. They surveyed the parking lots within Fairfield Center. And so they are going to be providing that information to us. And I think that indicates what's public, what's private, and then gives us a basis for doing a deeper dive into parking analysis downtown.
Anticipating that.
I just saw him today, so I don't know when that'll get over to us. But the other thing that they offered was also, as Commissioner Randolph mentioned, potentially looking at the downtown parking supply in terms of whether there are opportunities to make public lots, like if it made sense where you have adjacency, a lot of, I think we talked about this before when we looked at our parking regulations, West Hartford, Westport, Middletown, there's a lot of communities that have more defined public parking areas where they have kind of used the existing building lines and kind of combined private lots together to create singular public lots. Fairfield hasn't really undergone that exercise, even though we have what I would call a fairly mature downtown area at this point with a lot of activity and vitality. So I think we're a little bit behind schedule in terms of really looking at that and trying to incorporate, if we're able to kind of produce combined lots, create public lots, and then have wayfinding signage. We're a little behind as a downtown, I feel, in that effort, which could help really, I think a lot of the complaints that we're hearing is that people have to drive a long time to find a spot. I think the way that other downtowns that are vital and active and pedestrian oriented have been able to successfully manage this is by creating public parking lots, creating really easy wayfinding signage to get to them. And I think that's kind of the step that we need in order to ensure that by enacting more strenuous parking requirements, we don't lose buildings that are deeply engaging to the sidewalk and, you know, the public right of way that creates such a nice walkable environment for Fairfield.
But I think the goal has to be to preserve what we have and not to encourage more density or 52-foot buildings up and down the Post Road. We are not designed like Westport, like West Hartford, where we have massive parking lots behind our buildings. We are not designed that way. Most of our lots are private lots. We have very few public spots. I don't believe many developers are going to give their lots to, you know, town residents to use if they're not supporting their businesses. Maybe at nighttime, I think it's a great idea when there's shared parking at night. You have a dental building, you have a restaurant at night, you know, for them to share lots, great. But if this is about encouraging density and encouraging, you know, 52-foot buildings up and down the Post Road, I'm not for that. So I think we need to be clear about what we're trying to accomplish. And I believe it's to preserve the businesses that are already in existence, not necessarily to enact regulations to allow those to be torn down and for 52-foot buildings to be built with apartments above.
If I could just clarify as well, what a parking study does also for downtown is it looks at your on-street supply. It looks at, you know, are you maximizing your on-street supply that's available, as well as those opportunities for, you know, making public some of your private areas for parking. And again, it's what Westport just did, a downtown parking study within the last 3 years. A lot of downtowns have undergone this. So I think it's a, you know, it's definitely where you start to understand, you know, whether or not you have a genuine parking deficiency or whether it really is something where you can maximize the opportunities.
Okay, so just to try to recap, sounds like for,
letting us have time for public comment, but.
so it sounds like for our next public hearing, Commissioner Randolph is going to work with Commissioner Monahan and Braun to try to turn their suggested zones into defined districts, I guess, using the GIS technology. Is that right? Am I saying that right? And then we'll get an invite out to Mr. Barnhart, so we can try to get him here and ask some questions about the downtown.
I'm actually going to use probably the IT that I mentioned, but well, one or the other.
I'm
will
sorry,
figure it out.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
dictating
I mean,
specific,
okay.
but
We stay for 10 minutes and listen to members of the audience.
I'm okay with that. All right, any member of the public who wishes to be heard, just feel free to come on up.
Who's going first? I'll go first. Thank you for extending the time. My name is Susan DiCarlo. I live at 264 Crestwood Road. Been in this town for 33 years. I'd like to say in regard to this comment about the traffic or parking study, I worked for 10 years at 140 Sherman Street. That is a private building with designated parking. There were times I would get to work and there wouldn't be parking for the people that worked in that building. So when you start talking about sharing lots, I'd like to know where that would be. You'd go down the side streets, down Sherman Street. There's no parking available there. So we've only made it worse, to Commissioner Monahan's point about Sanford Street development going in. You can't go down these streets right now. And with added development, it's only gonna get worse. So it's disappointing to me to hear that we need to do this study or bring in MetroCog. We're 6 weeks away from a deadline. And that's 3 more meetings. So this idea of studies and we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, the time is now to do this. So it's disappointing to come here and we talk about this study and that study. I don't know when that's gonna happen. So I'm gonna end and I'm gonna let somebody else comment.
All right, I'll go. No, it's not a problem, I promise. I'll jump over the table. I need to get away from all my voice. Hi, Suzanne Miska, 123 Rygate Road. One of your agenda items tonight, which you didn't go over, was about allowing development on 1 acre lots between the train tracks and 95. Okay, and then on top of that, we're going to not require parking. And it just kind of blows my mind. I've lived in this town for 65 years. I've seen what this town has done and where we're going. And I'm constantly told that my problem is that I don't appreciate change. And I will tell you, I appreciate change if the change is to make something better. What I'm finding is that a lot of these changes are not showing me where this town is going that's going to make it better. Right now, to get from Rygate Road to anywhere, to my parents down on the beach, takes 20 minutes easily. It never did. And it's only because we continue to develop and overdevelop and require all of these units to be done. And while I appreciate that, it's meeting a state requirement, it's really sad to watch what is happening to our town. No number of trees is going to make it better. And if you guys decide not to make people have to put parking or make them have to account for parking, this town is going to be a disaster. If you go out on a Friday night in Fairfield Center and the Rite Aid has it all roped off, there's no place to park. So go ahead and put apartments there, because I don't know where these people are going to park their cars. And if you think they're not going to bring cars, that's sadly mistaken. Because there's no grocery store, there's no pharmacy. I don't know where these people, maybe they're walking to Stop and Shop or getting on the bus. I don't think that's happening. Additionally, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but the diagram, and I appreciate Ms. Terrigan was going to speak with me about it on the phone, but that one-on-one, while I appreciate that, it doesn't help the public. Those circles that were done of where you were going to make changes or potentially look for changes, without streets, I don't know what the orange circle means or the green circle means. You need to be clear so that the public understands that what you're doing and where you're doing it. Because it's going to happen that things are going to get done and we're all going to sit there and be like, when did this happen? How did this happen? When did this take place? So the information has to be very clear to the public. Those graphs of circles need to have streets on them so that people understand what you are now imposing on the people who own homes on those streets. So I ask you, as you're doing this, take what you need time, whether it's studies or whatever. What I don't understand is if everyone knew this thing was coming on July 1st, why weren't we doing this in January? Why are we waiting? I mean, we did every other thing in the last 6 weeks. I've never seen TPZ pass anything so fast in my life. I mean, you guys have altered all these zoning regs, all under the guise that you know it's gonna help you deter the developers. Well, so far tonight, all I heard was every developer sending you an amendment to make it sound like this looks like a good piece of lot. And if you just do this, then, let me develop it. I don't know. I don't know. But you guys are the line. You're what's going to make Fairfield what it's going to be. We don't do that, except for voting. We could vote you in, we could vote you out, I get that. But you right now are deciding what Fairfield is gonna look like. Please don't make us look like Stratford. Please don't make me look like Milford or Rye or Westchester or White Plains. Fairfield, the little gazebo in the center of town. Fairfield, it's a small town. And I'd love it to stay that way. I just don't know if what you all are doing is gonna allow that to exist. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
My name is Jackson Shostak. I live on Figler Avenue here in town. Thank you all for meeting tonight and staying to hear the concerns that so many of us are here for. I think what you're doing by postponing again is a good thing, and it's a good faith step to listen to more data, see more maps. I was playing on GIS in the back for about an hour, and I carved out maybe one half of one district downtown, which covered all of the commercial and part of Reef. And I think, our town planning and zoning can make more of an effort to protecting downtown. There are a lot of traffic and congestion concerns in addition to road safety. We're all about road safety here in Fairfield, but what's the biggest problem is the cars, is the congestion. We're narrowing our roads to allow for more bikes. That also could lead to other, parking issues in general and finding space downtown. But I want to say I appreciate you guys pushing back and considering all the data that's coming at you and the potential new maps ahead to really protect our downtown. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Linda Devaney. I live on Malins Road up near Fairfield University, 163 Malins Road. I moved to this town 6 years ago because my husband and I fell in love with it when our daughter went to Fairfield University. And we decided when we were going to move out of New York, we lived in Westchester, we liked the idea of Connecticut and we loved Fairfield. I probably spent 4 years going to open houses, looking at towns. I looked at Milford, I looked at Trumbull, I looked all over, loved Fairfield. And part of it was the downtown. We loved the restaurants, we loved the shops, we loved the beach area. We loved everything about it. And we moved here and now it seems like everything's going to be destroyed that we moved here for. And talking about parking, my goodness, parking is a real situation. We try to go out to dinner in town really frequently with family members who live in Fairfield, with friends who come up from Stamford or wherever to meet us. And parking is always an issue. And you try to park in the Bank of America lot, or you try to park behind the Bank of whatever it is, Chase, behind Chase, but here or there. And you're always concerned, are you going to get in some sort of trouble because these are private lots for businesses. Granted, the business is closed at this time of night, but still, it's their lot. But where are you going to park? There are not that many spaces. Not every restaurant or not every store has its own parking lot sufficient to take care of all of the people that work there and to take care of all the people that they hope are going to come in and shop there and spend money there. This is suburbia. Some people may not like that. Some people may feel that they want to turn it into some sort of a city, to a White Plains, to a Stamford, but it is not. This is more than an hour's commute from New York City. This is suburbia. People have cars, okay? People go places in cars. They shop in their cars. They pick up their kids in cars, whatever. They're all over town in their cars. And we need places to park the cars, to go to the restaurants, to go to the shops, to utilize the library, to whatever. We need parking. And it's very important to maintain that. If we're going to be building high-rise, 4-story, 5-story, whatever they are, apartment buildings at various places in town, and we're not going to provide sufficient parking for every apartment in that building, where is that overflow of residential parking going to go? They're going to take up spots in the lots, and their cars are going to be there all day, all night. Then where are the customers going to park when they go to a restaurant or a shop? Because there will be residents parking in all of those spots and taking them up all day long while they're at work or while they're in their home or whatever. It's something you really have to think about. Parking is a big, big factor because, like it or not, this is suburbia and people have cars and they're going to continue to have cars. And just because you put in a bike lane or you build extra sidewalks, people are not going to give up their cars. So I hope this doesn't become a congested nightmare, and I hope my husband and I are still happy here 6 years further down the road, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's a beautiful town and we fell in love with it. And I hope to God it stays the beautiful town that we've always loved. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I talked last week, Bridget McNamara, I live on Carroll Road. I just have one comment. I'll keep it brief. I find it very ironic that in the same meeting that we're discussing how many trees a car dealership is going to put in on the Fairfield Bridgeport line, and we're taking time counting trees for the car dealership. We recently approved a car dealership on a portion of Post Road that some people don't want to limit parking, or some people, don't want to have enough parking spots for these 5-story, 16 apartment buildings. Find that very interesting because you're gonna have a car dealership, a new car dealership here, actually 2 on the opposite side of the street. Brand new Porsche dealership. We've got the luxury car dealerships a mile or so down the road in Westport, but Fairfield's gonna have 16 apartments with no parking, but people there to sell the cars to the people that live in the apartments in the town of Fairfield. Again, like I said last week, this is United States. We are built on freedom. Cars build freedom. My own son just drove from Connecticut to Alaska in a car. We drive. We have cars. We are independent, and cars build independence. Kids graduate from school. They buy cars, get new jobs, buy cars. This notion that by building apartments that don't have parking, that people won't have cars is just a silly dream. It really truly is. And every person in those apartments, maybe one will ride his bike down to Stop and Shop and back, but that's gonna be the exception, not the rule. Every one of those apartments is gonna have at least 1, possibly 2, maybe even 3 cars if it's a mother, father, and a teenager in the 2-bedroom apartment. Then last week, you also made the comment that people will ride their bike down to downtown from the restaurants. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna ride my bike with my husband and my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old from Patterson down to downtown to go to Colony Pizza. I'm like, that's just silliness to think that people are gonna ride their bikes downtown to go out to dinner. Our town is huge. I don't know the square footage off the top of my head. I don't have that knowledge, but it's a long way from all the way up by the schools that are up that way, and the people that live north of the Mary are not gonna take their bikes with their kids and their family downtown to go to dinner, plain and simple. The town needs to protect the downtown, so there's always parking for the people that wish to enjoy it. Like one of you said already, it's very difficult to find a parking spot on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night for dinner. Going, and you used Westport as an example. You try to go shopping in Westport on a weekend, it takes at least 20 minutes to find a spot. I don't care. It takes 20 minutes unless it's snowing or pouring rain. It's at least 20 minutes. That's all I want to say. Save downtown Fairfield.
Anyone else want to speak?
Hi, I'm Emily Howe.
I live on Elm Street. I got a call from my brother today. He said, did you see on call sheet the question about when Fairfield, Connecticut will be getting parking meters? And so I want to ask the commission, do you know anything about that? Is that
Where was this?
on call sheet? Is that a thing that's in the works? I just wonder if you knew. I heard also this week that the pantry has let go of all of their staff. I don't know if that's true. Is that true? There's a whole remapping happening of our downtown, our town in general. And I would like to believe that there is an active data collection effort happening by this commission. I have not seen any evidence of it. And so for like the last, 6 meetings-ish, it's been, oh, we need to talk about parking. 2 of our commissioners are talking about, we need to talk about parking. And now in May, what's today, the 12th? May 12th, we're gonna talk about, oh, maybe a parking study. Now, I listened to Mark Barnhart in his Economic Development Commission meeting. He was very cautious, as he said, well, it seems like people are really upset about parking and maybe we could contribute funds to that. I think that's a great idea. But I also think that it would be perfectly reasonable to spend actual time sitting in a room, here's where we think it should be. And that's the thing that's not happening. And I keep seeing in meeting after meeting, okay, there's 2 proposals on the table. But there's no meeting of minds about where that should be. Proposal 1 includes things like Ludlow High School. Are we worried about developing there? Do we need to protect that parking? That seems like that could be just not on the list, maybe. Or the Richardson Nature Preserve in Southport. We need to protect that. Are those things on there? The fury in Fairfield is real. I wish you would take it seriously and stop wasting our time. For real. Instead of like the cattiness amongst the commission. That's all. Good night.
Anyone else who wants to speak?
I'll just speak briefly. My name is Chris Linford and I live on Bronson Road, a very busy road with a very big building already on it. I too moved here just over 5 years ago and my first TPZ meeting was 15 on Colwell Road. And that's got me right into it. We relocated here because of my husband's job, but we chose Fairfield because of its small town charm, its beautiful neighborhood, its vibrant downtown, and a sense of community. The concerns about overdevelopment in 15 on Colwell Road back then, we had rallies at the gazebo. Those concerns have not changed. Residents still do not want unchecked density, massive apartment growth, 52-foot buildings lining Post Road with reduced setbacks and inadequate parking. I'd also like to say there are other things going on simultaneously. Safe Streets Initiative. So while we remove setbacks here at TPZ, Safe Streets, one of the options was sidewalk extensions. So now then that goes, it confuses me that all the commissions and departments really aren't on the same page. While change and growth are inevitable, they should come at the expense of thoughtful planning and protecting the character of our town. What I have heard here for 5 years from Commissioner Braun and former Commissioner Harrison is studies, traffic studies, parking studies, and this is over 5 years. So now today, I hear parking study, finally 5 years later. There has been no studies done. They were all pre-COVID. Like the world has changed, everything has changed. We need studies done, and thank goodness obviously the Economic Commission offered to contribute and now we're looking at that, but we should have been doing this all along. And I would just like to say that, yes, you are elected commissioners, but you're supposed to represent your constituents, and we are your constituents. And there's many more who aren't here because they feel their voices aren't heard. Because continually, now going on 5 years, our voices are not heard. I write letters left and right. They're really not heard because nothing is ever done about it. And these developers come in, like, for instance, I was here for 111 Mill Hill Road today, and I see Steven Shapiro's name on everything, whether he's on it officially, he's an agent's rep, somehow he's officially in everything. And they want to create their own plans. And it's just, I just don't think I think we have to start reining in a little. So thank you. That's really all I want to say.
Just one last thing I want to add to what I'm saying. What you just brought up made me think of this. There's only whatever there is here, 15 people in the room.
I'm sorry, just name again for the record, sorry.
Oh, Linda Devaney on 163 Malins Road. Maybe there's only 15 people here. Maybe there were 20 people earlier. Some people left, whatever. We don't want you to think that this is the sum total of concern in the town for these topics, especially
We don't
parking
think
and
that.
density.
We don't think that.
The town is very concerned. This is all anybody
that.
talks about. And everybody is very worried about what's going to happen, the density issue, the parking issues, that our town is being turned into a city. And it's very widespread, so don't be misled by just the number of people that are here. That's all I wanted to say.
But thank you for the well-intentioned point. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there anyone joining remotely who wishes to be heard? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming and speaking. We'll hold this hearing open. And no motion necessary and no motion. Thank you all.
Thank you for staying.
Thank you for staying for us, to hear us.
Of course, thank you for being here. It's very meaningful.